Chapter 620. What's going on? Qin Yu was startled. Qin Yu could clearly feel that he was unable to move. It was a very strange feeling. It was not spatial imprisonment. Qin Yu was very sure of it. The connection with the new universe is still there. Qin Yu secretly heaved a sigh of relief. He was very sure that he could return to the Neo-verse with just a thought. It seems that the others can't move either. What's going on? Qin Yu guessed in his heart. Suddenly, he thought of a possibility. Time stop. This is time stop? Qin Yu thought in his heart. However, Qin Yu's Neoverse spatial energy wasn't affected by time stop. Qin Yu carefully sensed it, and after a short while, he began to understand. So time stop is used to completely stop the flow of time in an area. When the flow of time is stopped, the spatial ripples and everything else will be frozen. So this is what time stop means. Humph. The utmost North Sage Emperor Zhong Fan, the Northwest Sage Emperor Zhou Hua, the utmost East Sage Emperor Huang Fuyu, the utmost South Sage Emperor. All of the Sage Emperors were shining with light. The light that was flickering on the surface of Zhong Fan's body was black. The light that was flickering on the surface of Zhou Hua's body was lightning. The light that was flickering on the surface of Huang Fuyu's body was golden. Once the several sage emperors acted, the flow of time in this space once again returned to normal. The bloodlines of the 8 great divine clans combined with their clan protection spiritual treasures are indeed very powerful. They can even break the time stop. Luo Fan praised loudly. The expressions of the 8 great saint emperors sank. However, this is the joint attack of the 8 great sage emperors. If I were to take on any one of you by myself, I'm afraid that it would take me some time to break the time stop. Luo Fan said with a light smile. The 8 great sage emperors were all very clear about this. One-on-one, no one was Luo Fan's opponent. After all, it wasn't that easy to break time stop. In particular, if a saint emperor were to face this attack alone, it would definitely take some time. By that time, Luo Fan would have been able to take his life. Luo Fan, what do you want? Speak. Zhou Hua looked at Luo Fan. Luo Fan's expression suddenly turned cold. If you all wanted to kill Qin Yu one-on-one, I would not care about that. However, if you all want to attack Qin Yu in a group right before my eyes, I will not care about that. Humph. You can try. The expressions of Zhong Fan, Zhou Hua and them all changed. Once Luo Fan said those words, Zhong Fan, Zhou Hua and them all knew very well that it would likely be impossible for them to kill Qin Yu today. Qin Yu. Luo Fan turned around and looked at Qin Yu. Qin Yu also stood up from his chair and lightly smiled at Luo Fan. Azura God King, thank you for your help. Actually, I wouldn't care even if they attacked me in groups. Qin Yu, you're wrong. Luo Fan said solemnly. Although these 8 great sage emperors do not conduct themselves well, when their clan protection spiritual treasures are used together with their special bloodlines, their might is still extremely astonishing. Qin Yu nodded slightly, but he didn't really care. Qin Yu, don't be too careless. The spirit treasures of the 8 god clans all have the special effect of freezing space. Once the space around you is frozen, the spatial fluctuations in that area will also stop, and you will not be able to teleport. You can imagine what the result of being unable to teleport would be. This is also the reason why the God King of Life was unable to escape back then. Luo Fan reminded Qin Yu with good intentions. Freezing space? Qin Yu suddenly recalled the abilities of mid-level heavenly deities. Low-level heavenly deities were able to fly. Mid-level heavenly deities were able to possess spatial domains. Within the spatial domains, one could use spatial energy to suppress one's opponent. Using spatial energy to suppress one's opponent was also called spatial sealing. Spatial sealing and spatial freezing were 2 different concepts. Spatial freezing was to cause the space itself to be frozen. The space in that location would no longer fluctuate. If the space in that location did not fluctuate, then it would not be related to the space in other locations. Spatial freezing, unable to teleport, so that's the case. Qin Yu suddenly realized. Teleportation was through space. If even space was frozen, then how could one teleport? However, Qin Yu didn't care about it. What you all have frozen is merely the unceasingly fluctuating spatial energy of the divine realm. As for the spatial energy of my new cosmos, how are you all going to freeze it? Qin Yu was extremely confident. As he was the master of the new cosmos, how could others possibly be able to freeze his spatial energy? Qin Yu, if you're willing, you can join our Azura Sea. As long as you join our Azura Sea, I guarantee that no one will dare to do anything to you. The Azura God King Luo Fan suddenly said. Zhang Fan, Zhou Hua and them were all startled. If this Qin Yu were to truly join the Azura Sea, then it would be troublesome. Zhou Hua was a bit anxious. Luo Fan's terror had already been tested with the blood of God Kings. No one doubted him. At this moment, Qin Yu's heart was moved. Join the Azura Sea? Qin Yu admitted that this was indeed an extremely enticing proposal. Merely, in the depths of Qin Yu's heart, he still wanted to rely on himself. Azura God King, I will consider your proposal. Qin Yu said with a smile on his face. Luo Fan was a bit disappointed. However, he still smiled and nodded. Qin Yu's gaze swept toward the God Kings of the Thunder Punishment City. He then took a glance at Zhang Fan. He had completely ignored Zhou Xian. Qin Yu said with a smile. Since your Thunder Punishment City does not dare to fight me one-on-one, then I, Qin Yu, am also disinclined to bother with you all. Farewell. Qin Yu said coldly. Azura God King, Blood Demon Queen, everyone, farewell. Qin Yu smiled and clasped his hand to the God Kings of the three great Ascender powers. Then, he disappeared into thin air. Zhou Hua, Zhang Fan and them wanted to say something. However, Qin Yu had already disappeared. They simply did not have the time to say anything. Thunder Punishment City, you've made a fool of yourself this time around. The Blood Demon Queen's bell-like laughter sounded. At the same time, she also disappeared with a teleportation. Brother Zhou Hua, Brother Zhang Fan, everyone, farewell. Luo Fan also clasped his hand and then instantly disappeared. In the blink of an eye, the 6 God Kings from the Ascender powers had all disappeared. Only the dozen-plus God Kings from the 8 great Sage Emperors' side remained. These God Kings all had bitter smiles on their faces. In the end, all the God Kings bid their farewells and left one by one. This time around, not a single God King from the other powers was injured. Only the Thunder Punishment City's 4 great God Kings had too seriously injured. As time passed, the news of Qin Yu appearing in the skies above the Eastern Sea and fighting against the 2 God Kings of the Thunder Punishment City soon spread through the entire Divine Realm. The people of the Thunder Punishment City were all enraged. They were able to guess that this news was likely spread by the people from the Ascender powers. Ever since this news spread, countless people in the Divine Realm began to discuss Qin Yu. There were even many experts of the Divine Realm that began to worship Qin Yu. Formation Array Grandmaster, Artifact Craftsman God and even defeated 2 God Kings in succession as a high-level heavenly deity. All of this caused Qin Yu to be filled with a mysterious halo. Especially a high-level heavenly deity defeating God Kings. In the past, this was something that was simply unimaginable. Ever since the birth of the Divine Realm, there was a saying, before God Kings, heavenly deities could only be considered as ants. Not a single heavenly deity was capable of defeating a God King. Regardless of how many heavenly deities there were, it would still be useless. This saying was even regarded as a rule. However, Qin Yu had broken this rule. Time passed. In a blink of an eye, several hundred years had passed. In these several hundred years, the entire Divine Realm could be said to be peaceful. Merely, there would be a lot of rumors. One moment, people would say that Qin Yu had appeared in the floating snow city. Another moment, people would say that Qin Yu had appeared in the Thunder Punishment City. In short, Qin Yu had become the most dazzling person in the Divine Realm. Many of the youths of the Divine Realm felt endless admiration for Qin Yu. Instead, they felt disdain for Zhou Xian and the others. Inside a restaurant in Yuqi City, Over a dozen people were seated on the second floor of the restaurant. At this moment, the sound of footsteps could be heard from the stairs. 3 youths were walking in one after another. "Boss, good wine and good dishes, quickly bring them up." A golden-clothed youth among the 3 said loudly. Many people in the restaurant started to frown as they looked to that golden-clothed youth. However, that golden-clothed youth merely swept his rude and unreasonable gaze across the crowd. He did not seem to care about them in the slightest. "Fei, sit down," Qin Yu said. This was the first time in several hundred years that Qin Yu had returned to the divine realm since the battle in the Eastern Sea. This time around, Qin Yu had brought Hou Fei and Kuro back with him. "Big brother, don't worry. Sister-in-law will definitely be fine," Kuro said in a soft voice. Qin Yu also squeezed out a smile. Actually, Qin Yu had come to the divine realm to relieve his boredom. Over 100 years ago, Qin Yu and his clone had finally managed to completely comprehend the spatial laws left behind by Zhuo. However, Zhuo had only passed on half of the spatial laws to Qin Yu. The other half of the spatial laws was still with Li Er. Roughly a dozen years after Qin Yu had completely comprehended the other half of the spatial laws, Li Er and Qin Yu were undergoing soul yuanying dual cultivation. At that time, the 2 soul tears of life in Li Er's body actually began to fuse. This fusion caused Qin Yu to become extremely worried. That was because she had actually entered a very special state. Qin Yu did not dare to disturb her at all and could only wait at the side. As he waited, 100 years had passed. Qin Yu was extremely worried. Thus, this time around, Qin Yu, Hou Fei and Kuro had come out to relieve their boredom. "I've heard that Lord Qin Yu has appeared in Yuchi City." Suddenly, a sentence from the restaurant startled Qin Yu and his brothers. At the same time, Qin Yu and his brothers looked toward the origin of the voice. A yellow-gowned man said emotionally, "Just yesterday, that brother of mine saw a black-gowned youth in Yuchi City's Mount Bewitch You. That brother of mine was from the Black Dragon Pool in the past. He had personally seen Lord Qin Yu. He was most definitely not mistaken. It would appear that Lord Qin Yu still has feelings for Mount Bewitch You." Qin Yu, Hou Fei and Kuro glanced at each other. They were stunned. "Mount Bewitch You? I seem to have only arrived in the divine realm today." Qin Yu didn't know whether to laugh or cry in his heart. "What's this called?" "Several tens of years ago, my eldest uncle's master." "Do you know my eldest uncle's master?" Another black-gowned man said. "I do." "How many times have you told me that your eldest uncle's master was a low-level heavenly deity, right?" That yellow-gowned man said with a smile. The black-gowned man nodded and said, "My eldest uncle's master is a heavenly deity bodyguard of the Thunder Punishment City." He had personally seen a black-gowned youth appear in the Thunder Punishment City and enter that Zhou Xian's mansion. Zhou Xian? A trace of disdain appeared on the yellow-gowned man's face. That sort of person actually dared to fight over a wife with Lord Qin Yu? He is truly bringing disgrace upon himself. "Oh, that's right, continue." "After Lord Qin Yu, oh, no, after that black-gowned youth entered Zhou Xian's mansion, what happened below?" Hearing those conversations, Qin Yu couldn't help but smile helplessly. There were a lot of stories about Qin Yu in the divine realm. They were so vivid that when Qin Yu heard those stories, he began to wonder if he had sleepwalked to that place. "Big brother, you are truly amazing." Hou Fei raised his thumbs up to Qin Yu. Qin Yu laughed at himself. "Let's quickly eat." Several hundred years had passed since the Battle of the Eastern Sea. Thus, it was naturally impossible for those god-kings to constantly search the divine realm with their consciousness. Thus, Qin Yu was able to relax and stay in the divine realm. If a god-king were to search for him, Qin Yu would immediately know about it. After leaving the restaurant, Qin Yu and his brothers began to stroll around Yuchi City. On their way here, Qin Yu had already heard about his achievements several times. The light of day disappeared and the curtain of darkness descended. "Fei, Xiaohei, let's return," Qin Yu said. After that, the 3 brothers directly teleported away from the divine realm and returned to the new cosmos Purple Mystic Star. Purple Mystic Star. At this moment, it was evening. The light of the setting sun sprinkled over the earth, causing the entire earth to turn red. Qin Yu and his brothers began to walk in the sky. They were walking toward the distant purple mystic mansion. Suddenly, Qin Yu sensed a change in the location where Zhongli was in seclusion training. Quickly, let's go. After saying that, Qin Yu immediately teleported away. What happened to Big Brother? Hou Fei and Kuro looked to each other in dismay. After that, the two of them hurriedly rushed toward the purple mystic mansion. Inside the purple mystic mansion, outside of a quiet pavilion, Qin Yu appeared out of thin air. At this moment, the entire pavilion was emitting a jade-green radiance. Surging life energy was being emitted from the jade-green radiance. Qin Yu stood outside of the pavilion. However, he did not dare to take a single step into the pavilion. To be continued. If you want to know what happened next, please log on to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 621. The jade-green light was slowly circulating on the surface of the pavilion. As for the grassland surrounding the pavilion, it seemed as if it was affected by the surging life energy. The grass and flowers were growing unceasingly. Is the fusion finally about to succeed? Qin Yu looked to the pavilion before him. On the second floor of the pavilion, Zhongli's long hair was draped over her shoulders. She was quietly sitting cross-legged. Her sparkling and translucent face was emitting the radiance of life. Her entire body was surging with life energy. Those with profound power such as Zhonglan, Hou Fei, Kuro and them all sensed the change in this place. They all rapidly rushed over to the outside of the pavilion. They also knew that Zhongli had reached the final juncture. Thus, they all stood outside of the pavilion. No one dared to intrude. Huff! The air suddenly started to tremble. The jade-green light suddenly shrunk. All of the jade-green light instantly disappeared from the surface of the pavilion. The entire pavilion returned to its normal appearance. Qin Yu's eyes suddenly shined. "Little Yu, how is it inside?" Zhonglan asked in a low voice. At this moment, he was also worried about Li'er. Among everyone, only Qin Yu possessed a telepathic connection with Zhongli. Furthermore, as Qin Yu was the master of the new cosmos, Qin Yu was naturally the one most familiar with Zhongli's situation. Qin Yu's gaze had been fixed on the second floor of the pavilion the entire time. Hearing Uncle Lan's question, he turned around and looked to Uncle Lan. With a slight smile he said, "Li'er's current state is very good. The two soul tears of life have completely fused together. Furthermore, they have completely fused with Li'er's soul yuanying. I presume Li'er will come out soon." Zhonglan also heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. "That's good. Big brother, why hasn't big sister Li'er come out yet?" Hou Fei asked in confusion. Qin Yu was also puzzled by this. He was able to sense that Li'er should be about to succeed. However, why hasn't Li'er come out yet? "Monkey, don't be anxious. Wait a bit longer," Kuro said in a low voice. Hou Fei pouted and glared at Kuro. However, Hou Fei did not say anything else. Qin Yu and the others waited quietly outside the loft. No one knew what Li'er was doing. But this wait lasted for a long time. One day later, Qin Yu, Hou Fei, Kuro and Zhonglan were still waiting. An entire day had passed. However, there was not the slightest sign of Zhongli coming out. "Big brother, do you know what happened to sister-in-law?" Kuro said softly. Xiao Hei was also a little worried at this time. Qin Yu frowned. He shook his head and said, "All I know is that Li'er's body doesn't have any energy fluctuations. It's just that her soul has entered a deep state of cultivation." "Oh." Zhonglan frowned. Could it be that Li'er is comprehending those spatial laws? Other than that, there shouldn't be any other reason. Qin Yu said. As for Qin Yu, he was secretly looking forward to it. After all, The matter of fusing two soul tears of life was something that no one had ever done before. Although it appeared to not be dangerous, it was hard to say whether or not it would be dangerous when it was actually done. As Qin Yu and them stayed here for a long time, Qin Feng and Qin Zheng, who were searching for Qin Yu, also found this place. Little Yu. Qin Feng and Qin Zheng suddenly walked in from outside the courtyard. Qin Feng saw Qin Yu and them standing outside the loft and sighed in his heart. Qin Feng naturally knew that Zhang Li had been in closed-door training the entire time. As for the relationship between his third brother and Zhang Li, Qin Feng also knew very well. Qin Feng urged, "Little Yu, don't wait here foolishly. When sister-in-law succeeds, she will naturally come out." However, right after Qin Feng said those words, Qin Yu directly rushed into the second floor of the loft like lightning. The window of the second floor of the loft opened by itself, allowing Qin Yu to enter. Ho Fei, Kuro and them glanced at each other. "It would appear that Li Er has already awakened," Zhang Lan said with a smile. The second floor of the loft was extremely spacious. The dark red-colored floor was emitting a pleasant sandalwood fragrance. As for Zhang Li, she was sitting cross-legged on the floor. Her purple-colored dress was also dragging on the floor. Right after Zhang Li opened her eyes, she saw Qin Yu standing before her and looking at her motionlessly. "Brother Yu," Zhang Li said softly. Her eyes contained a trace of joy. Qin Yu carefully observed Zhang Li. He was unable to refrain himself from gasping in admiration. The complete fusion of these two soul tears of life was truly miraculous. Even Li Er's temperament had changed a bit. As for her appearance, it had changed even more. Her originally jet-black long hair now possessed a jade-green light flowing through every single strand of her hair. Even her pupils possessed a jade-green color. "Brother Yu, what are you looking at? Could it be that Brother Yu doesn't like my current appearance?" Zhang Li pursed her lips and said deliberately. Qin Yu smiled. "Of course not. Oh, that's right, Li Er. I sensed that the two soul tears of life had completely fused yesterday. However, why did you only wake up now?" Zhang Li's face blushed. Seeing Zhang Li's reaction, Qin Yu grew even more puzzled. Actually, the process of the two soul tears of life completely fusing was the process of Zhuo Qiumei completely fusing with Zhang Li. During this process, Zhang Li even came to know about Zhuo Qiumei's entire life. During this process, Zhang Li had completely comprehended the comprehension of the spatial laws within her body. As for the day after the soul tear of life completely fused with her, Zhang Li was actually recalling the scene of her dual training with Qin Yu's nascent soul. That was because, during the dual cultivation, Zhang Li was able to discover some of Qin Yu's comprehension of the spatial laws. After a day of reminiscing, Zhang Li was actually able to completely comprehend some of the areas of the spatial laws that she was unable to comprehend. In other words, Zhang Li had already comprehended the spatial laws. However, the current Qin Yu did not know that. After all, what Zhang Li had comprehended was the Divine Realm's spatial laws. The Divine Realm's spatial laws were completely useless in Qin Yu's new cosmos. "What's wrong? Could it be that there's something that you're embarrassed to say?" Qin Yu said with a smile. Zhang Li's face was red. She muttered, It's because I comprehended the spatial laws. Because I comprehended the spatial laws, I woke up." "Oh," Qin Yu replied. However, he immediately reacted. "What did you say?" Qin Yu suddenly opened his eyes wide and looked at Zhang Li in surprise. "You said that you comprehended the spatial laws?" Zhang Li nodded. She raised her head and looked at Qin Yu. With a brilliant smile, she said, "What's wrong? Can't I?" "Li Er, you're not lying, right?" Qin Yu was overjoyed. If Li Er had become a god king, then Li Er's safety would be guaranteed. At the same time, he would no longer have to be overly overcautious. 2 hours later, in a pavilion in the 100-mile circumference inner lake of the Purple Mystic Mansion's rear garden, Qin Yu, Zhang Li and Zhang Lan were seated around a cyan-colored stone table. "Little Yu, you said that Li Er comprehended the spatial laws and became a god king?" Upon hearing what Qin Yu said, Zhang Lan was immediately shocked. Zhongli had only trained for a few years and had only become a high-level heavenly deity for a short period of time. How could she become a god king this quickly? This was indeed an unimaginable matter. Qin Yu looked to Zhongli with a smile on his face. Uncle Lon, it's better that you let Li Er explain it herself. Qin Yu recalled the explanation that Zhongli had given him in the pavilion. Even now, he was still extremely shocked. Zhongli looked to Zhong Lon. Uncle Lon, it's Aunt Zhua Qiumei. May. Zhong Lan's expression slightly changed. Zhongli lightly nodded and said, "That's right. When the two soul tears of life completely fused with my soul and dissipated into the world, I finally understood everything." Zhong Lon calmly listened. Aunt Zhua Qiumei's research on the soul had already reached an extremely high level. It could even be said that she had completely researched the soul. As for the more important, true spirit, Aunt Zhua Qiumei was unable to understand it. Zhongli slowly said, "Zhongli, when Aunt Zhua Qiumei was attacked by the sage emperors, the space around her was frozen. She was unable to teleport. Of her two great followers, one died on the spot and the other was seriously injured. When faced with the joint attack of the sage emperors, Aunt Zhua Qiumei knew that she would not be able to escape. Thus, before her death, she completely fused her comprehension of the spatial laws, all of her energy and her soul into the two soul tears of life. Only her true spirit was dissipated into the world." Zhong Li's voice was low and deep. Her eyes were slightly red. Back then, Zhua Qiumei had treated Zhong Li like her own daughter. Thus, at this moment, Zhong Li naturally felt extremely pained. If it were other god kings, they would definitely not be able to accomplish such a feat. However, Aunt Zhua Qiumei's research on the soul had reached the pinnacle. That was why she was able to accomplish such a feat. When these two soul tears of life completely fused with each other, I came to know everything that Aunt Zhua Qiumei had experienced. As for the spatial laws that Aunt Zhua Qiumei had left behind, it was extremely easy for me to comprehend them. After Zhong Li finished saying that, she grew silent. At this moment, Zhong Lon was silent. It was very easy to understand why Zhong Li was able to reach the God King level all of a sudden. In fact, it was all created by Zhua Qiumei. She had directly transmitted a lot of things to Zhong Li through her soul. Qin Yu and Zhong Li glanced at each other. The two of them were both able to imagine Zhong Lan's current frame of mind. Zhong Lon lightly exhaled. He had a smile on his face. He looked to Qin Yu and Zhong Li and said, "Little Yu Lier, now that the two of you both possess the strength of God Kings, what have you two decided to do next?" As for Zhong Li, she looked to Qin Yu. In Zhong Li's heart, whatever Qin Yu decided to do, she would definitely support him. Regarding the future, Qin Yu already had a plan in his heart. "Uncle Lon, the gap between our current strength and the Sage Emperor's strength is still not small. Thus, I have decided to split it into 2 steps. Qin Yu said directly. The first step can be considered as the incubation period. During this period of time, I will not make any major movements. After all, no matter what, we must wait until the heir gives birth to the child before we can proceed to the second step." Zhong Lon looked to Zhong Li's stomach. Zhong Li's stomach was bulging. Although it was no longer small, it was still far from giving birth. Zhong Lon slightly nodded. Qin Yu continued. "During the first step of the incubation period, I have 2 things that I must do. The first thing is to strengthen my own strength. The second thing is to lower the morale of the Sage Emperors and disrupt their unity." Zhong Lan's eyes shined. "What you said is very reasonable. However, strengthening yourself? How are you going to strengthen yourself? Merely relying on cultivation is not something that you can increase your strength as you wish," Zhong Lon said with a smile. Qin Yu smiled and nodded. "I understand that. I plan to invite the hidden God Kings to help me." "Invite the hidden God Kings?" Zhong Lon shook his head. Qin Yu knew very well that the possibility of successfully inviting the hidden God Kings was very low. However, Qin Yu was still prepared. "Uncle Lon, I know that Senior Zhua Qiumei has a follower by the name of Yi Feng. Now that Li Er has become the God King of Life, I believe that God King Yifeng ought to be able to give face to Lier and my persuasion and agree to help us. Qin Yu's first target was the southern boundary archipelago's Bamboo Forest Islands island master, Yifeng. Yifeng. Zhang Lan's eyes shined. He then nodded. If you are to invite him, there is indeed hope. However, little you, have you seen Yifeng? Do you know where he is? Uncle Lon, please rest assured. Last time when I went to search for the Mirage Spirit Mirror, I met Yifeng. Thus, I am very familiar with his aura. Even if he had left the southern boundary archipelago, I would still be able to easily find him through my spatial energy. Qin Yu said confidently. Qin Yu then smiled. As for the other hidden god kings, although it is extremely difficult to invite them, I am after all a craftsman god. Zhang Lan muttered to himself. He then shook his head and said, relying on Grand Mist spiritual treasures to invite god kings, the possibility of success is not high. Unless you are willing to use a first-rate Grand Mist spiritual treasure to invite god kings. Qin Yu nodded. Qin Yu also knew very well that for hidden god kings to be able to stay hidden for so long, they were definitely not people that could be easily invited. Merely, no matter what, it was still not bad to try. If they were able to invite 2 or 3 god kings, Qin Yu, his clone, Jiang Li and Uncle Lon who was hiding in the dark, then Qin Yu's side would possess sufficient strength. To be continued. If you want to know what will happen next, please log on to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 622. You said to lower the morale of the sage emperors and destroy their unity. What do you plan to do? Zhang Lan asked. Qin Yu said with a light smile. Lowering their morale is very easy. As long as I occasionally act 2 or 3 times and defeat their god kings, this matter would spread through the divine realm and the morale of the sage emperors would naturally decrease. Furthermore, the sage emperors would only need to fight against me a couple times and they would understand that spatial freezing is ineffective against me. Qin Yu had a confident expression on his face. Regardless of how they try to surround me, I would still be able to instantly enter the new cosmos. Furthermore, when I fought against Zhou Tong last time, I had only used time acceleration by 1,000 times. Actually, 1,000 times acceleration is far from my limit. Zhang Lan was also shocked. He had no choice but to sigh in admiration. That youth from the mortal realm had now grown into an expert of the divine realm. And now, the new cosmos mortal realm had been completed. The temporal laws had also been perfected. Merely, in view of the fact that the higher layer of the cosmos was still growing, Qin Yu could only use time acceleration in terms of the temporal laws. As for time stop and time reversal, Qin Yu was still unable to use them. However, even with time acceleration, Qin Yu's instantaneous acceleration was still far greater than 1,000 times acceleration. The reason why he had only used time acceleration by 1,000 times was because, at that time, Qin Yu's reaction speed was sufficient to block the attacks of the Sage Emperors. As long as the 8 great Sage Emperors are defeated several times in succession, how will they still be able to raise their morale? I want to see if they still have any morale left. Qin Yu continued. As for destroying their unity, that's because the current 8 great Sage Emperors are not united at all. Qin Yu still clearly remembered that when they were in the sky above the Eastern Sea, the utmost East Sage Emperor Huang Fuyu had given Qin Yu a meaningful glance. That glance allowed Qin Yu to understand that Huang Fuyu was still on Qin Yu's side. All of this is merely the first step, the incubation period. What I need to do. Lier is pregnant. Thus, I can only seek stability. After Lier gives birth to the child, I will carry out the second step. I will attack the Thunder Punishment City. A trace of coldness flashed through Qin Yu's eyes. Zhang Li and Zhang Lan both sucked in a breath of cold air. Attack the Thunder Punishment City? The Thunder Punishment City was the most transcendent power among the 8 great sacred lands. Behind them was the Thunder Punishment Exalted Celestial. Because of that, no one dared to provoke the Thunder Punishment City for countless years. Others are afraid of that Thunder Punishment Exalted Celestial, but I. Qin Yu coldly laughed in his heart. An Empyrean expert merely comprehended the laws of space and the laws of time. Unfortunately, the Empyrean had only comprehended the spatial laws of the God realm. Once he entered the Neoverse, he would not be able to use the time laws. Qin Yu clearly felt the responsibility on his shoulders. Today, he was no longer the lonely person he used to be. Instead, he had a wife and would even have children in the future. All of this made Qin Yu have a strong sense of danger. The existence of the Thunder Punishment City was a threat to his relatives. Since there was a threat, Qin Yu would not let it continue to exist. Little Yu, you said that the second step is to attack the Thunder Punishment City. You must still make proper preparations. Without absolute certainty, you must not launch the attack. Zhang Lan reminded solemnly. After all, the Thunder Punishment Exalted Celestial was not someone easy to deal with. I know. That's the reason why I have set this matter as the second step. Qin Yu lightly smiled. Zhang Lan nodded. Zhang Lan was very reassured when it came to the way Qin Yu handled things. The purple mystic star gradually grew cold. Goose feather-like snowflakes began to float down from the sky. Qin Yu and Zhang Li were nestled against each other in a pavilion within the Purple Mystic Mansion's inner lake as they watched the snowflakes swirling in the air. Brother Yu, when I was in the Divine Realm's floating snow city, I saw snowflakes every day. Sigh, I wonder how Yen-er is doing now. Zhang Li said softly. Qin Yu lightly smiled to Zhang Li. Li-er, do you want to see what Yen-er is doing? Zhang Li immediately looked to Qin Yu with a confused expression. Qin Yu waved his hand. Immediately, an enormous water screen appeared in the air before the pavilion. The scene of the Divine Realm appeared on the water screen. Even though Qin Yu was in the new cosmos, the new cosmospatial energy was still able to enter the Divine Realm through the channel and cover the entire Divine Realm. Thus, Qin Yu knew everything about the Divine Realm very well. And now, Qin Yu had merely transferred what he saw to the water screen. Ah, the floating snow city, Zhang Li said in pleasant surprise. The floating snow city appeared on the enormous water screen. I wonder if Yen-er is in the city. Zhang Li looked to Qin Yu with anticipation. Qin Yu smiled and said, Zhang Yen is not in the floating snow city. Instead, Qin Yu smiled and turned his gaze to the water screen. The scene on the water screen immediately changed. An enormous city on the ground appeared on the water screen. This city rapidly enlarged and a courtyard appeared on the water screen. Looking over the courtyard wall, a white-robed Jun Luoyu could be seen sitting side by side with Zhang Yen on the grass. They were chatting with each other. Yen-er is very happy. Seeing this scene, a smile appeared on Zhang Li's face. Li-er, shall we go and do that thing? Qin Yu suddenly said beside Zhang Li's ear. Zhang Li turned her head and looked to Qin Yu in surprise. Do it now? It's already been so long. We can go and do it now, Qin Yu said with a smile. Zhang Li also nodded her head with an expression of anticipation. Qin Yu and Zhang Li disappeared from the pavilion in the middle of the lake. In the sky above the Divine Realm's Eastern Sea region, it was the same region where Qin Yu fought with the two god kings from the Thunder Punishment City. Qin Yu and Zhang Li appeared here out of thin air. It's been such a long time since we've been to the Divine Realm. Now that we've come out, we're going to shake the Divine Realm. Qin Yu looked to Zhang Li with a smile. As for Zhang Li, she raised her head and looked to the sky. One could see that the originally calm sea region gradually started to surge as if it was being stirred up by a giant. Multicolored clouds appeared in the sky. More and more multicolored clouds gathered. The colors were red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, and purple. These were the rainbow auspicious clouds that appeared when a god king was born. Around every cloud, there were also all kinds of gorgeous multicolored lights circulating about. It was extremely dazzling. Chi! A lightning bolt pierced through the sky. Soon after, more lightning bolts appeared out of thin air. Countless electric snakes soared into the sky. The rainbow auspicious clouds grew more and more numerous. Brother Yu? Zhongli looked to Qin Yu. It's about time. It's time to go. Those god kings have already noticed this place. Qin Yu smiled. Then, holding Zhongli's hand, they disappeared from the sky above the Eastern Sea region. In the vast sky, rainbow auspicious clouds appeared. Thunder and lightning roared. The sound was so loud that it resonated through the entire divine realm. Naturally, the god kings of the divine realm all noticed this scene. The message this scene conveyed was very clear. Another god king had been born. When Zhou Xian in the Thunder Punishment City saw this scene, his expression turned gloomy. Another god king has been born? In these past years, Zhou Xian felt that he had been extremely unlucky. Duanmu Yu had become a god king. Although that Qin Yu who had suddenly emerged did not become a god king. Qin Yu was so powerful that he was even stronger than ordinary god kings. As for him, Zhou Xian, even after hundreds of millions of years, he was still a high-level heavenly deity. To become a god king from a high-level heavenly deity was indeed a very difficult step. It was very normal for him to not be able to reach it. However, for Duanmu Yu and Qin Yu to appear in succession, this naturally caused Zhou Xian to feel injustice in his heart. Especially, today, another god king had been born. Imperial Father, where is that newly born god king? Seeing Zhou Hua in the sky, Zhou Xian immediately flew over and asked. Zhou Hua started to frown. Puzzled, he said. According to the location of the rainbow auspicious clouds, the location below the centermost region of the rainbow auspicious clouds should be the location of that god king. As for that location, it's actually what? Zhou Xian grew anxious. It's actually the location where Zhou Ran, your second uncle and Qin Yu fought last time. Zhou Hua also grew puzzled. Regardless of whether it was Zhou Hua or the others, none of them saw Qin Yu and Zhang Li. That was because Qin Yu was using his spatial energy to observe the entire divine realm. At the moment when those god kings were alerted, Qin Yu had already returned with Zhang Li. These god kings could only deduce the location of the newly born god king from the location of the rainbow auspicious clouds. Generally, when a newly born god king was born, they would be sensed by the divine realm. Those signs would then appear between the heaven and earth. To Zhou Hua and the others. Since the signs appeared there, that newly born god king should have gained enlightenment there. Xian, you stay here. I'll go over to the Eastern Sea to take a look. Zhou Hua suddenly said. Imperial Father, I also wish to go. Zhou Xian was also very curious about that newly born god king. Especially, that newly born god king had become a god king at the location where Qin Yu fought last time. Faced with his son's request, Zhou Hua could only nod his head. Many people in the divine realm were very curious about this newly born god king. Especially since this newly born god king had suddenly disappeared. Not a single person knew the identity of this newly born god king. In the purple mystic star of the new cosmos, in the pavilion in the center of the lake of the purple mystic mansion, Qin Yu and Zhang Li had returned. Brother Yu, those god kings would likely not know that the place where I became a god king was not there. Zhang Li smiled very happily. Zhang Li had completely comprehended the spatial laws of the divine realm in the new cosmos. Merely, it was impossible for the heaven and earth of the divine realm to sense Zhang Li in the new cosmos. Li look over there. Qin Yu pointed to the front. In front of the pavilion in the center of the lake, on the enormous water screen, the scene of the Eastern Sea of the divine realm appeared. At this moment, two god kings had appeared in the sky above the Eastern Sea. In the sky above the Eastern Sea of the divine realm. In a short moment, 11 people had appeared. Among these people, only Zhou Xian was not a god king. The rest of them were all greeting each other. The 11 people that had appeared were all from the 8 great divine families. As for the Ascender powers, not a single person had come over. Everyone, have any of you discovered who this newly born god king is? Huangfu Yu was the first to speak. Immediately, those god kings all looked to the others. After a short moment, they all understood. Not a single one of these God Kings knew the identity of this newly born God King. Why is this newly born God King hiding his identity? Zhong Fan frowned and said, "The 8 great sage emperors generally wanted to investigate the experts of the divine realm. And now, a newly born God King had suddenly disappeared. This caused them to be unable to investigate. Without mentioning about hiding his identity, the most important thing is, why did this newly born God King obtain sudden comprehension and breakthrough here?" Zhou Hua said with a serious expression. "This is the place where Qin Yu appeared last time. I find it very hard to believe that a high-level heavenly deity just so happened to obtain sudden comprehension and become a God King here. Coincidence? Over half of the God Kings present were unable to believe it. The Divine Realm's ocean was extremely vast. It was over hundreds of millions of miles wide. How could there be such a coincidence? Brother Zhou Hua, you mean to say that this newly born God King is related to that Qin Yu?" The utmost West Sage Emperor asked. At this moment, Zhou Hua grew silent for a moment and said, "Although I do not have 100% certainty, the possibility is very large. Everyone, you all should carefully consider the suggestion that I gave everyone after the last battle. Brother Zhou Hua, you all can slowly discuss this matter. I shall take my leave first." Huang Fuyu laughed. He immediately waved his sleeve and teleported away. Zhou Hua took a glance at the location where Huang Fuyu disappeared. He slightly frowned but did not say anything. In the pavilion in the middle of the lake in the new Cosmos Purple Mystic Mansion, Qin Yu and Zhong Li were clearly seeing this scene. "Brother Yu, this Zhou Hua is truly ruthless. He actually wants to deal with you the same way he dealt with Aunt Suoqiu." Zhong Li also had an angry expression on her face. Qin Yu smiled indifferently. "Rest assured, Li Er, this Zhou Hua will soon discover that his scheme is useless. I truly wish to see what his expression would be when he thinks that he has frozen the space and that I am unable to escape." Chapter 623. As the sea breeze brushed past, the boundless sea of bamboos on the bamboo forest island began to ripple. Rustling sounds could also be heard. It took quite a while for the rustling sounds to stop. Qin Yu and Zhong Li were standing side by side on the beach of the bamboo forest island. What a beautiful sea of bamboos! There are actually so many bamboos growing on the island. Zhong Li looked at the emerald green bamboos that resembled jasper and gasped in admiration. Qin Yu was relatively familiar with the bamboo forest island. He immediately pointed to the sea of bamboos before them and said, "Li Er, this sea of bamboos is not natural. Instead, it is the transformation of an extremely powerful magic treasure. Once one enters the sea of bamboos, one will be trapped within it. Of course, Li Er, you are already a God King now. Even if you are trapped within it, you will be able to easily escape." Transformation of a magic treasure? Zhong Li looked at Qin Yu in astonishment. Qin Yu lightly smiled and said, "Wait a moment. You will know when you meet that God King Yi Feng. Could it be God King Yi Feng's magic treasure, vast territory?" Zhong Li suddenly said in astonishment. "That is the only spatial Grand Mist spiritual treasure among the first-rate Grand Mist spiritual treasures." Qin Yu looked at Zhong Li in astonishment. How did Li Er know about it? Zhong Li saw Qin Yu's expression and couldn't help but smile. She said, "Brother Yu, after the 2 soul tears of life completely fused with me, my memories of Aunt Suoqiu became clear. This God King Yi Feng is one of Aunt Suoqiu's 2 great followers. He is also the owner of the first-rate Grand Mist spiritual treasure, Vast Territory. Back then, it was by relying on the vast territory that God King Yi Feng was able to escape from the encirclement of several sage emperors." Qin Yu nodded. Qin Yu had some understanding of the battle back then. Several sage emperors joined hands to attack and even froze space, making it impossible for Suoqiu and the others to teleport. In that sort of situation, Suoqiu and the others had no way to escape. Before Qin Yu appeared, there were only 10 publicly known first-rate Grand Mist spiritual treasures in the Divine Realm. The 8 great sage emperors each had one, the Azura God King had one, and the last one was God King Yi Feng. However, this godly King Yi Feng's spirit treasure, vast territory, was a spatial spirit treasure. In terms of attack power, he was not as good as the other 9. In terms of trapping and escaping, it was still very powerful. Brother Yu. Zhong Li suddenly frowned. She said worriedly, "If God King Yi Feng is always in the Sea of Bamboo, how are we going to talk to him?" This Sea of Bamboo should be the vast territory, a first-rate grand mist spiritual treasure. Once you enter, even a God King won't be able to escape so easily. Qin Yu smiled. "What are you talking about? Why don't you just say it?" Qin Yu looked to the Sea of Bamboos. With a clear voice, he said, "God King Yi Feng, I am Qin Yu. The person beside me is my wife, Zhong Li. I hope that God King Yi Feng can come out and meet me." Qin Yu's voice was so loud that it reverberated between heaven and earth like thunder. However, no matter how the voice echoed, it was restricted to an area of several thousand kilometers. "Zhong Li." A surprised voice was heard. A thin man wearing a white gown appeared before them. Qin Yu recognized him with a single glance. He was God King Yi Feng. Compared to the last time they met, this God King Yi Feng seemed to have become even thinner. He was like a sickly person. "Uncle Yi Feng." Zhong Li bowed obediently. Yi Feng looked at Zhong Li. This Uncle Yi Feng made Yi Feng feel extremely happy. He also revealed a rare kind smile. "Little lady Zhong Li, I never expected that after the last time we met, you'd already become someone's wife. Furthermore, you've reached the God King realm. It's all thanks to Aunt Suochomei's help. If it wasn't for Aunt Suochomei's 2 soul tears of life, who knows how many years it would take for me to reach the God King realm." A trace of sadness appeared in Zhong Li's eyes. "Aunt Suochomei? May?" Yi Feng paused for a moment. His gaze turned misty. He seemed to be recalling the time when he followed Suochomei. "Little lady Zhong Li, according to the information I know, you should have obtained a single soul tear of life. How come you've obtained 2? Yi Feng looked at Zhong Li inquiringly. "Could it be that the second soul tear of life was obtained by your current husband, Qin Yu?" Zhong Li took a glance at Qin Yu beside her. A radiance of happiness appeared in her eyes. "Men, it was Brother Yu who gave me the other soul tear of life." Yi Feng looked at Qin Yu. He nodded his head and said in satisfaction, "Little lady Zhong Li, your husband is truly not bad. He's actually willing to give you a soul tear of life. Furthermore, ever since this Qin Yu and them left to search for the Mirage Spirit Mirror, I've been paying attention to what's happening in the Divine Realm. In the past few years, the news regarding Qin Yu has been spreading non-stop in the Divine Realm. This husband of yours is truly extraordinary." Yi Feng looked at Qin Yu with a gaze of admiration. Refining a first-rate grand mist spiritual treasure and becoming the new craftsman god. Using a first-rate grand mist spiritual treasure as a gift. Openly snatching the bride in the Sage Emperor's palace and even defeating 2 god kings in the Divine Realm's Eastern Sea region. Little lady Zhong Li, for you to be able to find such a husband, I am very happy for you. If May was still here, she would definitely be happy for you too. Being praised in such a manner, Qin Yu felt somewhat happy in his heart. However, the 2 of you, husband and wife, shouldn't be too complacent. God King Yi Feng's expression sunk. There is a mutual agreement between the Divine Realm's 8 great divine families. They will not allow any other powers to grow. They will definitely eliminate them while they're still budding. Yi Feng looked at Qin Yu and Zhong Li and said solemnly. Qin Yu frowned. Zhong Li asked in confusion. "Aren't there 3 great Ascender powers in the Divine Realm? How did these 3 great Ascender powers establish themselves in the Divine Realm?" Yi Feng said with a light smile. The rise of the 3 great Ascender powers was due to a certain amount of coincidence. Firstly, it was due to the birth of the unfettered exalted celestial 6 quadrillion years ago. That gave the Ascender powers a backer. Secondly, it was due to the rise of the Azura God King. Furthermore, the Blood Demon Queen had an ambiguous relationship with the Azura God King. As for the Dual Domain Island's God King, he was also extremely powerful. Due to various factors, the three great Ascender powers rose to prominence. After they successfully rose to prominence, the 8 great divine families would definitely suffer an extremely great loss if they wanted to eliminate them. In addition to the hints of the unfettered exalted celestial, the 8 great divine families and the 3 great Ascender powers eventually maintained a peaceful state. Yi Feng suddenly sneered. However, the 8 great divine families had an agreement with each other. The birth of the 3 great Ascender powers was already the limit of their tolerance. They would not allow the birth of a 4th Ascender power. Once there were signs of that happening, the 8 great divine families would eliminate them while they were still budding. Back then, my big brother and I followed Ame. Because the 3 great divine kings were gathered together and Ame had the ability to lead, she gathered many people under her command. This caused the 8 great divine families to feel threatened. Thus, they decided to eliminate this power that had yet to fully mature. The 8 great divine families were extremely decisive in their actions. Once they took action, they left no chance for survival. Because of this, my big brother died. Ame also died in the end. Only I barely managed to escape with my life. A trace of self-ridicule appeared on Yi Feng's face. Yi Feng suddenly looked to Qinyu and Zhongli. Qinyu, if my guess is correct, the sign of the Divine Realm's Divine King not long ago should be that of little girl Zhongli, right? That's right. Qinyu nodded in acknowledgement. Yi Feng said with a serious expression. Qinyu, your strength has already been completely understood by the 8 great divine families during the battle in the Eastern Sea. You, by yourself, are definitely comparable to a powerful divine king. Furthermore, Zhongli is a divine king. Most importantly, you all have conflicts with them. I think those 8 great divine families will likely truly be ruthless toward you all. Don't worry, brother, you defeated 2 divine kings last time. Zhongli had absolute confidence in Qinyu. Yi Feng shook his head. You all are wrong. Last time, the 8 great divine families were caught unprepared. In the beginning, they had thought that Qinyu was only a high-level heavenly deity. Thus, they did not think too deeply about how to deal with Qinyu. However, if they were to act again, it would be completely different. That is because they already know of Qinyu's strength. Once they act, they will definitely possess absolute certainty. By the time you all start to regret, it will already be too late. Yi Feng looked to Qinyu and Zhongli with bright eyes. I advise you all to join the Azura God King Luofan. Luofan's strength is extremely astonishing. Especially after he possesses a first-rate Grand Mist spiritual treasure, his strength is even more frightening. Even the 8 great divine families would not be willing to provoke him. Qinyu lightly nodded. Yi Feng has said so much and Qinyu knows very well in his heart. However, this Yi Feng did not know about his true reliance. His reliance was the new cosmos. The reason why the 8 great divine families were able to kill Zhuqiumei was because they had frozen space and made it impossible for Zhuqiumei to escape. However, was there anyone capable of preventing him from teleporting away? No one. God King Yi Feng, listen to me. Qinyu looked to God King Yi Feng. God King Yi Feng nodded and looked to Qinyu. Go ahead. God King Yi Feng, Li Er and I are able to conceal ourselves so that the 8 great divine families are unable to find us. However, Li Er is currently pregnant. I am unable to tolerate my own child being hidden forever. I am also unable to tolerate my relatives and friends being unable to live openly because of me. Thus, I wish to fight against those sage emperors. I also need your help, God King Yi Feng. Qinyu voiced his request. Qinyu did not wish to say too many emotional words. After all, the other party was a god king. Yi Feng would have his own considerations. Fight. A trace of anger actually appeared in Yi Feng's eyes. Qinyu, don't be too arrogant. Who do you think the sage emperors are? How could the sage emperors that have existed since the birth of the divine realm be so easy to deal with? Even if you don't want to live, don't make Zhongli suffer with you. As for me, I will not go crazy with you. Yi Feng humphed. Then, He turned around and walked toward the sea of bamboos. In 2 or 3 steps, he had already reached the sea of bamboos. God King Yi Feng. Uncle Yi Feng. Qin Yu and Zhang Li called out at the same time. However, Yi Feng did not come out. Only his voice resounded in Qin Yu's ears. Qin Yu, don't let the tragedy of Ah Mei happen again. Also, don't think that you can contend against the sage emperors just because you defeated 2 god kings. The attack power of the sage emperors combined with their clan protection's spiritual treasures is not something that you can imagine. After the voice dissipated, regardless of what Qin Yu and Zhongli said, God King Yi Feng did not respond at all. There was only the rustling sound of the sea of bamboos. After a short moment, Qin Yu and Zhongli had no choice but to admit that their efforts had failed. I never expected that the first target, the target that I thought I had the greatest hope for, would fail. It's a bad start, Qin Yu said with a self-mocking smile. Zhongli could only smile helplessly. Big brother Yu, why didn't you say that the sage emperor's spatial freezing was useless against you? If you said that, God King Yi Feng would most likely think twice. Zhongli said to Qin Yu. Qin Yu smiled helplessly. He immediately left after saying that to me. Did I have the time to say that? Furthermore, even if I said that, God King Yi Feng would not believe me. Li Er, if you hadn't entered the new cosmos, would you believe that there was another spatial law, temporal law and an endless amount of grand mist spiritual energy? Zhang Li was startled. That's right. Some of the things that Qin Yu did were truly filled with miracles. If she hadn't seen it with her own eyes, she would definitely not believe it. Amen? Qin Yu suddenly frowned. A God King's divine awareness that originated from the Mount Blazing Flame actually covered the entire divine realm. It just so happened to discover Qin Yu and Zhang Li. At this moment, Zhang Li also sensed the God King's divine awareness searching them. Zhang Li immediately said to Qin Yu, Big brother Yu, a God King has discovered us. Let's return. Qin Yu's eyes suddenly shined. He smiled. Li Er, the most important reason why this God King Yi Feng is unwilling to help us is because he believes that we will not be able to escape from the encirclement of the 8 great divine families. If I were to fight with those sage emperors at his doorstep and reveal some of my abilities, he should believe me after seeing it with his own eyes. Qin Yu said with a smile. Zhang Li muttered to herself for a moment and then nodded. Merely, I wonder how many God Kings the 8 great divine families will send to deal with us. Qin Yu said with a smile. Li Er, if you encounter any danger, you are to immediately enter the new cosmos. Do you understand? In terms of defense, Zhang Li was actually more powerful than Qin Yu. Zhang Li was wearing the first-rate Grand Mist spiritual treasure, Purple Rain clothes. Ordinary God Kings would not be able to injure her. In terms of offense, she possessed the first-rate Grand Mist spiritual treasure, Water Splitter. However, Zhang Li still felt a burst of warmth in her heart. Qin Yu's new cosmos spatial energy covered the entire divine realm. Of the 8 great sacred lands of the divine realm, other than the utmost eastern regions Mount Dazzling Gold and the subterranean city, the other 6 great sacred lands had all dispatched people. They've actually only dispatched 6 God Kings. However, all 6 of them are sage emperors. 6 great sage emperors joining hands. What a grand display! Could it be that these 6 great sage emperors wish to eliminate me, this threat, while I'm still in the bud? Qin Yu said softly. A trace of excitement emerged in his eyes. To be continued. If you want to know what happened next, please log on to www.qidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 624. Boom! An enormous lightning bolt that was as thick as a black dragon suddenly lit up the world, connecting the dusky sky and the vast earth. The Northwest Saint Emperor Zhou's entire body was faintly flickering with lightning. He stood in midair above the Thunder Punishment City. Countless lightning snakes were happily circling around him like children. Everyone, the truth has been revealed. The God King that was born that day was Zhong Li. According to the agreement from back then, since the newly born God King is Qin Yu's side, we must directly eliminate her. Zhou Hua had a cold expression. Lightning was flickering in his eyes. However, his voice was resounding in the minds of the other 7 sage emperors. At the same time, the other 7 sage emperors were also carefully listening. What Brother Zhou Hua said is reasonable. This Qin Yu is already an enemy of our 8 great divine families. That Qin Yu is comparable to 2 God Kings by himself. If we were to look at his artifact crafting ability and allow him to grow, then he would become an even greater threat to us in the future. The utmost South Sage Emperor Duanmu Yun's clear voice also sounded in the minds of the other sage emperors. Brother Zhong Fan, this Zhong Li is your daughter. What do you think? The utmost East Sage Emperor Huangfu Yu's voice sounded. Once the utmost East Sage Emperor Huangfu Yu's words left his mouth, the 8 great sage emperors grew silent. After a moment, Zhong Fan slowly said, "Let's do as we discussed that day and directly eliminate the threat." Ha ha. Zhou Hua started laughing. Brother Zhong Fan, there is no need for you to be so ruthless. We merely need to kill Qin Yu. As for Zhong Li, we can leave her alive. However, the vile spawn of her and Qin Yu, that vile spawn would naturally not have the chance to survive. Zhong Fan said indifferently. Good. Zhou Hua naturally arranged. According to the method that we discussed last time, Brother Huangfu and Brother Putai do not have to participate in the matter of killing Qin Yu. The 2 of you merely need to be responsible for stopping Luo Fan who might appear. The 6 of us will set off directly. Northwest Sage Emperor Zhou Hua, Utmost North Sage Emperor Zhong Fan, Utmost South Sage Emperor Duanmu Yun, Utmost West Sage Emperor Shen Tian, Southwest Sage Emperor Tang Lan and Northeast Sage Emperor Mu Qin. The 6 great sage emperors immediately used teleportation and appeared at the southern boundary archipelago at the same time. The sky was dark, and the boundless ocean was roaring and rolling. Bang! The huge wave suddenly slammed against a towering black reef on the island. The reef stood still, while the huge wave shattered, turning into countless splashes of water that fell onto the beach. Above the dark reef, Qin Yu and Zhong Li stood side by side. The 6 great saint emperors appeared out of thin air, surrounding Qin Yu and Zhong Li. Qin Yu swept his gaze across the 6 great saint emperors and said with a smile, "I wonder what the 6 great saint emperors have come to this remote southern boundary archipelago at the same time? Is it for sightseeing? Oh, I don't think so. Could it be?" Qin Yu's eyes suddenly sharpened. "For me, Qin Yu?" Zhou Hua, Zhong Fan, Duanmu Yu, Shen Tian, Tang Lan and Mu Qin. Among the 6 great sage emperors, there were 5 men and 1 woman. These 6 people all had a trace of coldness in their eyes. They were naturally indifferent to a person who was about to die. Qin Yu, you're a genius. If you can be self-aware and follow the rules, then you'll become a genius. If you were to follow the rules and follow the rules, then perhaps your future accomplishments would be even more astonishing. However, you no longer have a future. Zhou Hua smiled indifferently. At the same time, a spiritual pearl flickering with lightning appeared above Zhou Hua's head. Once this spiritual pearl appeared, Qin Yu felt that the surrounding space shook. After that, the surrounding several tens of thousands of miles of space actually did not have the slightest movement. This is spatial freezing? It is truly powerful. Qin Yu gasped in admiration in his heart. Qin Yu knew very well the principle behind spatial freezing. Generally, space would be in a fluctuating state at all times. Only in this manner would God Kings be able to use the spatial fluctuations to teleport away. However, once the spatial fluctuations stopped, one would not be able to teleport away. However, spatial freezing was only effective against ordinary God Kings. It was not effective against him. Zhou Hua, that little pearl flickering with lightning, is the legendary clan protection spiritual treasure of the Thunder Punishment City? A first-rate Grand Mist spiritual treasure? Qin Yu asked with a smile. Zhou Hua, Zhong Fan, Shen Tian, Tang Lan and them were all shocked. They were certain that since Qin Yu was able to teleport, he must have sensed that the space had been frozen. Similarly, Qin Yu must have sensed that he was unable to teleport away. In a situation where he knew that he was unable to escape, when facing the 6 great sage emperors, not only did he not care about escaping, he instead asked them about the Grand Mist spiritual treasures. Courageous. Since Zhou Hua had frozen the space, he naturally did not fear Qin Yu escaping. He nodded and said with a smile, "When the divine realm was born, the clan protection spiritual treasures of the 8 great divine families were born alongside the 8 great sacred lands. This spiritual pearl is a first-rate Grand Mist spiritual treasure. It is also the clan protection spiritual treasure of our Thunder Punishment City. Its name is the Thunder Origin Spiritual Pearl. When combined with our Lei clan's bloodline, its might is even greater." Zhou Hua had a proud expression on his face. Thunder Origin Spiritual Pearl? Qin Yu's heart moved. He thought to himself, "Back then, when I went to the Mountain Sea Palace, that silver-haired, silver-eyed youngster presented me 3 first-rate Grand Mist spiritual treasures on behalf of his master. One of them was called the Fire Origin Spiritual Pearl. Could this Thunder Origin Spiritual Pearl be similar to the Fire Origin Spiritual Pearl? Unfortunately, the newly born craftsman god of the divine realm is going to die just like this." A gentle voice sounded. The person who spoke was the Southwest Sage Emperor, Tang Lan. She was the only female among the sage emperors. A spiritual pearl was also floating above Tang Lan's beautiful long blue hair. Merely, this spiritual pearl was surrounded by water. "You cannot blame others for your death," the Northeast Sage Emperor Mu Qin said coldly. A cyan spiritual pearl also floated above his head. A spiritual pearl floated above the heads of the 6 great sage emperors. The colors of the spiritual pearls were different. The energy fluctuations emitted by the spiritual pearls were also different. Merely, their auras were able to faintly cause the heaven and earth to tremble. "Qin Yu, prepare to die," said Zhou Hua coldly. Once he said those words, it was equivalent to sending out the signal to attack. Immediately, the auras of the 6 great sage emperors rose greatly. "Wait." Qin Yu suddenly shouted. "What's the matter? Are you afraid of death? Are you regretting it?" Zhou Hua said mockingly. Zhou Hua was looking forward to seeing people who were about to die reveal their weak side in front of him. Extreme West Sage Emperor. Qin Yu stared at the red spiritual pearl above Shintian's head. "Is this spiritual pearl of yours called the Fire Origin Spiritual Pearl?" Although Shintian was puzzled as to why Qin Yu would ask such a question, he still nodded and said, "The 8 cornerstone spiritual treasures are the 8 origin spiritual pearls. My Shinto family clan controls fire elemental energy. Is there anything strange about this cornerstone spiritual treasure being called the Fire Origin Spiritual Pearl?" This Qin Yu is probably stalling for time because he is afraid of death. "Ha ha." Zhou Hua said with a sneer. At this moment, Qin Yu's mind was filled with thoughts. When he saw the spiritual pearl above Shintian's head, Qin Yu had a feeling from the spiritual pearl's aura and luster that the Shinto family clan's cornerstone spiritual treasure was exactly the same as the Fire Origin Spiritual Pearl he had obtained from the silver-haired, silver-eyed youth. Even the names are the same. They are both first-rate Grand Mist spiritual treasures. According to the sage emperors, the 8 cornerstone spiritual treasures appeared when the divine realm was born. Logically speaking, such spiritual treasures should be unique. Why did that silver-haired, silver-eyed youth give me a Fire Origin Spiritual Pearl? Qin Yu was puzzled. Also, the Shinto family clan's Fire Origin Spiritual Pearl appeared when the divine realm was born. How did that silver-haired, silver-eyed youth's master obtain the same Fire Origin Spiritual Pearl? There are 2 Fire Origin Spiritual Pearls. Could it be that there are more than one of the other 7 spiritual pearls? Qin Yu's mind was suddenly filled with a great deal of doubts. However, at this moment, the 6 sage emperors would not allow Qin Yu to continue thinking. The sea breeze became stronger, blowing Qin Yu's hair. "Do it!" Zhou Hua suddenly shouted coldly. Instantly, countless bolts of lightning emerged from Zhou Hua's body, making him look like a god of lightning. At the same time, a long whip completely made of lightning appeared in Zhou Hua's hand. The lightning on the long whip was purple, green, black and white. In short, there were all kinds of lightning that surrounded it. Phew! With a shake of the long whip, it was like a divine dragon stretching its body. With a shake of the lightning whip, it reached a length of 100 meters and was as thick as a water bucket. The gigantic lightning whip immediately covered the area above Qin Yu. The space around Qin Yu was instantly filled with countless bolts of lightning. Phew! An ear-piercing whistling sound resounded as the long whip arrived above Qin Yu's head. Qin Yu's hands were like streams of light as he suddenly grabbed at the lightning whip. The silver gloves automatically appeared on Qin Yu's hands. Seeing Qin Yu grab the lightning whip, Zhou Hua only sneered. Bang! Qin Yu's hands seemed to be able to contain the entire world. They directly wrapped around the lightning whip. However, in the next instant, Qin Yu felt a piercing pain from his hands. His arms were actually completely numb. What level of lightning is this? Qin Yu felt a burst of fear. He was wearing a pair of second-rate Grand Mist spiritual treasure gloves. Yet, he was actually injured. Ignorant. Zhou Hua coldly snorted. At the same time, several tens of enormous whips instantly appeared around Zhou Hua's body. At that moment, Zhou Hua was like an octopus. Those several tens of whips were his enormous tentacles. A single lightning whip was already so powerful. If several tens of them were to come. Qin Yu's body went numb when he thought of that scene. Earlier, I merely touched the long whip through the gloves. Yet, my arms went numb. If I were to touch it with my body, I reckon my body would be turned into ashes. Qin Yu was shocked. Soon after, he smiled. I am not a clone. My defense is unable to withstand their attacks. Today, I shall go all out and test my strength. A light flashed through Qin Yu's eyes. Hoo! As for the other 5 sage emperors, they were not in a hurry to attack. Instead, they had been watching the entire time. At that moment, they had personally witnessed that Qin Yu's group had suddenly become 2 people. A cyan-gowned Qin Yu and a black-gowned Qin Yu. The black-gowned Qin Yu rapidly retreated. As for the cyan-gowned Qin Yu, he charged toward the lightning whips. He actually dares to charge toward the source energy of lightning? Is he courting death? The surrounding sage emperors thought to themselves. Bang! Several tens of lightning whips struck the cyan-gowned Qin Yu's body. The cyan-gowned Qin Yu had a stupefied expression. However, his body was not damaged in the slightest. How could this be? Zhou Hua opened his eyes wide. The other 5 sage emperors were also astonished. No matter how powerful his body's defense is, it should be impossible for him to withstand the power of the source energy of lightning. Zhou Hua was simply unable to believe it. However, how could the 6 great sage emperors possibly know that the cyan-gowned Qin Yu was actually a first-rate Grand Mist spiritual treasure? Ever since the birth of the Divine Realm, there had never been a case of a first-rate Grand Mist spiritual treasure shattering. After all, first-rate Grand Mist spiritual treasures were simply too hard. The cyan-gowned Qin Yu's body's defense was naturally also extremely frightening. Furthermore, even if their attacks were able to shatter the cyan-gowned Qin Yu's body, the cyan-gowned Qin Yu would still be able to turn into cold mist. Undying body. Zhou Hua, is this your power? Sage Emperors, could it be that you all think that a single Zhou Hua would be able to take care of me, Qin Yu? The black-gowned Qin Yu said with a light smile as he stood not far away. At that moment, the black-gowned Qin Yu held a simple and unadorned black spear in his hand. On the spear were dark yellow specks. Divine Spear Waning Snow. The Divine Spear Waning Snow that was even more frightening than a first-rate Grand Mist spiritual treasure. Qin Yu had finally taken it out. Competing in attack power? Could it be that the attack power of the Divine Spear Waning Snow is inferior to your first-rate Grand Mist spiritual treasures? Qin Yu felt a trace of excitement for battle. It had been a very long time since he had this sort of feeling. Brother Zhong Fan, you go and take care of Zhong Li. We will take care of that, Qin Yu. The utmost South Sage Emperor Duanmu Yun said via divine awareness voice transmission. That Cyan Gown Qin Yu, Brother Zhou Hua, Tang Lan and the three of us will take care of him. As for that black gown Qin Yu, Brother Shintu and Brother Mu will take care of him. What do you all think? None of the Sage Emperors had any objections to the arrangement of the utmost South Sage Emperor. One must use a butcher's knife to kill a chicken. In a battle, one must use one's full strength. Furthermore, the strength displayed by the Cyan Gown Qin Yu was clearly stronger than the black gown Qin Yu. Merely, at this moment, Zhou Hua, Jiang Fan and them had yet to truly sense the might of Qin Yu's divine spear waning snow. Whoosh! With a lightning-like movement, Zhou Hua, Tang Lan and Duanmu Yun immediately surrounded the Cyan Gown Qin Yu. As for Shentu Yen and Mu Qin, the two sage emperors, they arrived before the black gown Qin Yu. As for Jiang Fan, he stood before Zhang Li. To be continued. If you want to know what happened next, please log on to www.qidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 625. Jiang Fan looked at his daughter. The current Zhang Li was already greatly different from the past. Her long hair was flickering with jade-green light. Her eyes contained a bit of green life force. All of this caused Jiang Fan to recall the God King of Life, Zhuoqiumei. The current Zhang Li, in terms of appearance and aura, was extremely similar to Zhuoqiumei from back then. However, there was an enormous difference between the two of them. Zhuoqiumei possessed an extremely independent and competitive personality. As for Zhang Li, she was gentle like water. Imperial Father, Zhang Li said in a low voice. However, Jiang Fan started to frown. He coldly said, Li, it's still not too late for you to turn back now. Obediently return with me and eliminate the vile spawn in your stomach. After that, you will still be my, Jiang Fan's, daughter and the princess of the floating snow city. Vile spawn? Eliminate? Zhang Li's expression changed. Her gentle gaze suddenly turned sharp. She stared at Jiang Fan. Imperial Father, this is my and Brother Yu's child. It is not a vile spawn. Thus, it is impossible for me to eliminate it. After being pregnant for so many years, Zhang Li had been able to feel the throbbing of the little life in her stomach at all times. The feeling of being connected by flesh and blood caused Zhang Li to be extremely fond of this child that had yet to be born. Her imperial father wanted to eliminate her child? How could Zhang Li possibly agree to that? If you are unwilling, then I shall personally eliminate that vile spawn. Jiang Fan said coldly. At the same time, his speed had reached the pinnacle. In an instant, he arrived beside Zhang Li. At the same time, a black stick appeared in Jiang Fan's hand. That black stick was extremely pitch black. It even devoured light. The stick was smashed toward Zhang Li. Zhang Li's reaction was extremely fast. The water splitter sword immediately appeared in her hand. Bang! Jiang Fan moved back. He looked at the sword in Zhang Li's hand and exclaimed in surprise. This sword of yours is quite powerful. It actually managed to block the origin energy of the darkness. This was given to me by Brother Yu. A trace of pride appeared on Zhang Li's face. Brother Yu? Humph. Jiang Fan humphed. Suddenly, the space where Jiang Fan was accelerated several 100,000 times. Before Zhang Li could react, Jiang Fan's stick had already smashed onto Zhang Li's body. At the moment when the stick smashed onto Zhang Li's body, a purple light bloomed from Zhang Li's body. Zhang Li's figure flew backward. You're not injured at all? At this moment, Jiang Fan was truly shocked. Even if he were to receive a strike from the darkness origin energy, it would still be impossible for him to remain unscathed. Jiang Fan's gaze immediately turned to the purple-colored dress on Zhang Li's body. Jiang Fan had already sensed that the reason why Zhang Li was not injured was related to this purple-colored dress. Jiang Fan, You are truly ruthless. Suddenly, an angry roar sounded. A black ray and a cyan ray, the two blurs arrived in front of Jiang Fan in a flash. Their frightening killing intent caused Jiang Fan to be shocked. At the same time, the other 5 sage emperors immediately chased over. Ah! Qin Yu held the divine spear Waning Snow in his hand. With a sudden shake of his hand, the divine spear Waning Snow started to spin and thrust toward Jiang Fan. As the divine spear Waning Snow pierced out, even the originally frozen space started to tremble, as if it was about to collapse. Not good. Jiang Fan's expression took a huge change. Fortunately, he had controlled the flow of time and increased his speed by several 100,000 times. Only then did he manage to clearly see Qin Yu's spear. From the trembling space that could collapse at any moment, Jiang Fan was able to foresee how frightening this spear strike was. In an instant, a myriad of rays of light descended from the black spiritual pearl above Jiang Fan's head. It covered Jiang Fan's entire body. A black shield appeared in Jiang Fan's hand. Bang! The black shield shattered. The tip of the divine spear Waning Snow brazenly pierced into the myriad of rays of light on Jiang Fan's body. That black ray of light started to undulate like a wave. It wanted to cancel out the attack of the divine spear Waning Snow. However, the dark origin spiritual pearl above Jiang Fan's head actually started to sway slightly. It was as if it was about to fall from Jiang Fan's head. The black ray of light on the surface of Jiang Fan's body directly collapsed. PFFF. Jiang Fan himself had already escaped far away. Fortunately, the dark origin energy emitted by the dark origin spiritual pearl managed to block the attack for a moment. That was why Jiang Fan only received some light injuries. Qin Yu retrieved his spear and stood there. Beside him, a cyan blur condensed into a cyan-gowned Qin Yu. Qin Yu coldly looked at Jiang Fan in the distance. Jiang Fan, seeing that you are Li Er's father, I did not kill you to the end. If you were to act like this again, then do not blame me for being ruthless. Kill me to the end? Jiang Fan sneered. From his point of view, Qin Yu was deliberately boasting. However, Zhang Li knew very well that Qin Yu was not boasting. That was because when Qin Yu attacked Jiang Fan earlier, he did not release the dark and yellow energy. Once the dark and yellow energy encircled the tip of the spear, that would be when the divine spear Waning Snow's attack power would be at its most frightening. At this moment, the 5 great sage emperors had all flown to Jiang Fan's side. Brother Jiang Fan, are you all right? Zhou Hua asked via divine awareness voice transmission. Jiang Fan lightly laughed. He said via divine awareness voice transmission. Humph, that spear of his possesses the ability to attack the soul. However, with the origin spiritual pearl protecting my soul, he is unable to injure me. Only then did Zhou Hua slightly nod. Brother Jiang Fan, this Qin Yu is very hard to deal with. That clone of his possesses an astonishingly frightening defense. Furthermore, it is able to turn reality into nothingness. It is extremely difficult to eliminate it. Earlier, Zhou Hua, Tang Lan and Duan Muyun had already experienced the might of Qin Yu's clone. Although they were able to withstand the attacks of that clone, they were unable to eliminate Qin Yu's clone no matter what. As for Shen Tuyen and Mu Qin who were attacking Qin Yu's actual body, their complexions had turned slightly pale. Shen Tuyen said via divine awareness voice transmission. Everyone, this Qin Yu's clone is one thing. At the very least, he is unable to seriously injure us. However, that spear in his hand is extremely powerful. Even the frozen space had nearly collapsed. Fortunately, Brother Mu and I were still able to freeze the space with the help of the origin spiritual pearl. The might of that spear is no weaker than a first-rate Grand Mist spiritual treasure. Zhou Hua said via divine awareness voice transmission. Zhou Hua clearly remembered that the protective talisman that his father, the Thunder Punishment Exalted Celestial, had given to Zhou Xian was destroyed by Qin Yu's spear. The attack power of this spear was something that one could imagine. Although the 6 great sage emperors were all astonished by Qin Yu's strength, they were not worried. How could the 8 great divine families only possess such a small amount of abilities? It seems. Zhou Hua's gaze was cast to the other 5 sage emperors. The 6 great sage emperors merely exchanged glances with one another. They all knew what the other was thinking. Brother Zhang Fan and Brother Duanmu will be the main force. Brother Mu, Tang Lan and Brother Shentu will be the auxiliary. I will preside over the overall situation. Zhou Hua said indifferently. The other 5 sage emperors all nodded. If the 8 great sage emperors of the divine realm were to casually take out any of them, they would all be able to find the best joint attack method. Now that the 6 great sage emperors were present, the great attack formation that Zhou Hua spoke of was also the best method. The darkness and light origin energies would be the main force, the others would be auxiliary, and the lightning origin energies would be the main force. Joint attack. This sort of joint attack of the origin energies was not something that the casual attacks of the sage emperors could compare to. In terms of might, if the 6 great sage emperors were to join hands, then perhaps even the Azura God King would not be able to withstand it. And at this moment, Qin Yu and Zhang Li were still completely clueless. Qin Yu had only just learned about the 8 great divine clan protection spiritual treasures, much less the cooperation of the 8 great divine emperors. As for Zhang Li, she was born too late. Thus, she also knew very little. Qin Yu and Zhang Li simply did not know that a great calamity was about to befall them. What are they planning to do? Qin Yu suddenly frowned. In the air before him, Zhang Fan and Duanmu Yun were standing side by side. Zhang Fan's body was radiating a myriad of black light. As for Duanmu Yu, his body was radiating a myriad of white light. The light emitted by the two of them complemented each other. At the same time, Shentu Fan, Mu Qin and Tang Lan formed a tripartite formation and surrounded Zhang Fan and Duanmu Yun. As for Zhou Hua, he was standing in the air above Zhang Fan and Duanmu Yu. The 6 origin spiritual pearls all started to shine brightly. Not good. Qin Yu felt a sense of crisis. Immediately, he sent a mind-voice transmission to Zhang Li. Li Er, return first. It's all right, Brother Yu. I have the purple rain dress. Zhang Li immediately said. That Zhou Hua stood above the 5 great divine emperors. His cold gaze was fixed on Qin Yu. Suddenly, Zhou Hua raised his hand. However, right at this moment, a countless number of bamboos started to descend from the sky. Those bamboos fluttered about endlessly. In an instant, they had completely covered the 6 great divine emperors. The 6 great divine emperors felt that they had suddenly entered another world. They were unable to sense Qin Yu at all. Qin Yu and Zhang Li were startled. What was going on? Qin Yu had seen it with his own eyes. Earlier, Zhou Hua was about to attack. Why would a countless number of bamboos suddenly appear? Bamboos? Could it be? Qin Yu thought of a person. Qin Yu, little lady Zhang Li, quickly leave. Yi Feng rapidly flew over to Qin Yu and Zhang Li. Yi Feng's eyes were filled with worry. The two of you quickly leave. With the 6 great divine emperors joining hands, even the Azura God King would not dare to take them on. Quickly leave. Qin Yu and Zhang Li both understood that the only first-rate Grand Mist spiritual treasure capable of trapping the 6 great divine emperors for a while was the only spatial spiritual treasure, the vast territory. However, even with the vast territory, how long could it last before the 6 great divine emperors joining hands? Uncle Yi Feng. Zhang Li was moved. God King Yi Feng. Qin Yu immediately had a good impression of this God King Yi Feng. For this God King Yi Feng to risk his life to save him and Li Er at this moment, it was sufficient to show his sincerity. God King Yi Feng urgently said via divine awareness voice transmission. Quickly leave. Even the Azura God King does not dare to take on such a joint attack. Do the two of you not want to live anymore? The frozen space is only several tens of thousands of miles. With your flying speed, you will be able to fly past it very quickly. I can still hold on for a while. Quickly, leave. God King Yi Feng's complexion suddenly turned red. A trace of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. Qin Yu was able to sense that the bamboo forest in the distant sky was vibrating unceasingly. The 6 great divine emperors were trapped inside. Evidently, they were frantically trying to escape. I am about to be unable to hold on any longer. Yi Feng was so anxious that his eyes were firmly fixed on Qin Yu. He gnashed his teeth and said, "Qin Yu, Ah Mei has died. A God King of Life has died. Do not let little Miss Zhong Li, the new God King of Life, die as well. Otherwise, my death will not be worth it." As he said those words, Yi Feng's complexion immediately turned pale. When Yi Feng decided to come out and block the 6 great divine emperors, he had already resolved himself to die. Yi Feng suddenly glared at Qin Yu. At this moment, Qin Yu still did not bring Zhong Li and escape. This caused Yi Feng to be extremely furious and anxious. In Yi Feng's heart, Zhong Li had fused with 2 soul tears of life. She could be considered to be the continuation of Zhuo Qiumei's life. Back then, when Zhuo Qiumei died, Yi Feng's heart was filled with grief. Now, he was willing to die for Zhong Li. That was because Zhong Li was the continuation of Zhuo Qiumei's life. The countless amount of bamboo forest suddenly collapsed and exploded. The countless amount of bamboo forest then flew back into Yi Feng's body. Yi Feng saw the 6 great sage emperors rushing over. He then took a glance at Qin Yu and Zhong Li. Soon after, he sighed. "Sigh, forget it, forget it. God King Yi Feng, you might be right. The combined attack of the 6 of them is truly powerful." Qin Yu suddenly smiled. At this moment, the 6 great divine emperors did not waste any time. Zhou Hua, who was controlling the formation, pointed at Qin Yu with a single hand. Immediately, a long 6-colored dragon swept toward Qin Yu. "Die." The 6 great divine emperors coldly looked at all of this. At this moment, Yi Feng had already given up all hope. He lightly closed his eyes. A trace of a tranquil smile appeared on his face. "Break." Qin Yu suddenly said a single word softly. Boom. In an instant, the several tens of thousands of miles wide region of space suddenly collapsed. Everyone within the several tens of thousands of miles wide region of space entered the chaotic flow of space. The expressions of the 6 great divine emperors greatly changed. The frozen space was broken. When the space collapsed, it meant that the frozen space was broken. When the frozen space was broken, it meant that Qin Yu, Zhong Li and Zhong Li could teleport and escape. Perhaps, I am truly unable to block it. Seeing that the long 6-colored dragon was still flying toward him at an extremely fast speed, Qin Yu smiled indifferently. Then, he brought Zhong Li and Yi Feng and disappeared into the chaotic flow of space. When the 6 great divine emperors saw this scene, they sighed to one another. Then, they teleported away from the chaotic flow of space at the same time. The collapse of the several tens of thousands of miles wide region of space took quite a while before it completely recovered. As for the 6 great divine emperors, they stood in the sky above the ocean. They were speechless. How did that Qin Yu break the frozen space? How? Zhou Hua's expression was somewhat unsightly. The eyes of the other 5 great divine emperors were filled with doubt and disbelief. Not a single one of them was able to understand the reason. To be continued. If you want to know what will happen next, please log on to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 626. In the sky above the ocean, the 6 great saint emperors were all silent. After a long time, Jiang Fan's low and deep voice sounded. "Spatial freezing, as far as I know, it can only be broken by an extremely powerful attack." "A powerful attack? Impossible." Zhou Hua shook his head. "Just now, we joined forces to unleash the single qi of 6 elements. The single qi of 6 elements is an attack that combines 6 different types of elemental energy. Just how powerful was the single aura 6 elements? In order to prevent this qi of 6 elements from shattering space, the 6 of us simultaneously used our origin spirit pearls to freeze space. The 6 of them joined hands to freeze space. The degree of spatial freezing had already reached an extremely terrifying level. Even the single Chi 6 elements attack couldn't shake the frozen space, so how could Qin Yu break it? The other 5 Saint Emperors nodded. Once the Sage Emperors used the formation to attack, they would first use their origin spirit pearls to freeze space. With the 6 of them working together, the degree of freezing space would be extremely high. The single Chi 6 elements attack had already reached a terrifying level. However, the space did not even vibrate. Yet, Qin Yu was able to easily break through the frozen space. Why? Could it be that this Qin Yu has a way to collapse space that we don't know about? Tang Lon suddenly said softly. In fact, there are 2 ways to make space collapse. One is to control the power of space, and the other is to use a powerful attack that exceeds the tolerance of space. The first method was to make the space itself collapse. This was the simplest. Even high-level heavenly deities know how to use it. However, the space earlier had been frozen, and the spatial power was unable to be controlled, the utmost South Sage Emperor Duanmu Yun analyzed. Everyone knew the reasoning behind Duanmu Yu's analysis. If the power of space could still be controlled when the space was frozen, then Qin Yu would have been able to teleport away. Zhou Hu sneered, but if Qin Yu's attack can surpass single Qi Luan, then killing us should be a piece of cake. Contradiction. It was impossible for Qin Yu's attack to surpass the combined single Qi 6 elements of the 6 Sage Emperors. Then how did Qin Yu shatter space? Neoverse, above Purple Mystic Planet. Qin Yu, Zhang Li, and Yi Feng appeared in the new universe at the same time. Yi Feng was still in a daze. How did the frozen space suddenly collapse? How did they suddenly escape? Qin Yu, how did you break the frozen space? Yi Feng hurriedly asked. Qin Yu already had a very good impression of Yi Feng. He smiled and said, Divine King Yi Feng, I would like to ask. Is there any way to shatter a space? It's very simple. One of them is like a high-level heavenly deity, using their comprehension of the spatial laws to control the spatial energy and cause the space to collapse naturally. Another one was when a powerful attack exceeded the tolerance limit of the space. Why are you asking this? Space had been frozen just now. It's impossible to cause space to collapse naturally. God King Yi Feng stared at Qin Yu. Don't tell me that your attack can cause the frozen space to collapse. I used the first method, Qin Yu said with a smile. The first method? Control the spatial energy and cause space to collapse naturally? Yi Feng was truly stunned. The space has been frozen. How did you use the spatial energy? Qin Yu lightly smiled. What I used was not the Divine Realm's spatial energy. What Qin Yu used was the new Cosmos spatial energy. The new Cosmos spatial energy also covered the entire Divine Realm. As long as Qin Yu wished for it, he could completely rely on the new Cosmos spatial energy to cause the entire Divine Realm to collapse instantly. When 2 different spatial energies exist in a space, then, by controlling any one of them, one would be able to cause that space to collapse. Qin Yu thought in his heart. And earlier, Qin Yu had used the new Cosmos spatial energy to cause that region to collapse completely. Brother Yu, why didn't you directly bring us back to the new cosmos? Zhang Li was a bit puzzled. Zhang Li knew very well that the frozen space only froze the Divine Realm's spatial energy. The new cosmos spatial energy was not affected. Qin Yu was completely capable of bringing Zhang Li and Yi Feng back directly. It's nothing. I merely thought of it by chance. That's why I did it. I felt that way. They wouldn't be puzzled as to why I was able to teleport. They would only be puzzled as to how I managed to break through their frozen space. Qin Yu said with a smile. Qin Yu, you said that you did not use the Divine Realm's spatial energy? Yi Feng spoke. At this moment, Yi Feng was still puzzled. How could it be possible to use spatial energy that was not from the Divine Realm in the Divine Realm? Yi Feng was simply unable to imagine that a single space could have 2 different spatial energies. Qin Yu looked at Yi Feng. Just by seeing how Yi Feng was willing to risk his life to save the 2 of them, or to be exact, save Zhang Li, This sort of action was already sufficient for Qin Yu to tell Yi Feng some secrets. In the sky above the Divine Realm's southern sea, the 6 great sage emperors were silent. To be exact, it was Zhou Hua who was looking at Duanmu Yun, Shen Tian, Tang Lan and Mu Qin with anger. As for the 4 great sage emperors, they were all silent. Cough, cough. Duanmu Yu coughed twice. Then he said, "Brother Zhou Hua, everyone knows about the operation this time. The strength that Qin Yu has displayed is also very clear to us. However, there is one thing that we can be certain of. This Qin Yu possesses the special ability to break through the frozen space." "That's right. Brother Zhou Hua, although we do not understand why Qin Yu possesses such a special ability, it is still a fact. For him to possess such a special ability, it means that it is completely impossible for us to kill him," Shen Tian said solemnly. Mu Qin nodded and said, "Since we are unable to kill Qin Yu, let's give up on the matter of pursuing and killing Qin Yu." "Give up?" Zhou Hua's heart was filled with anger. "Right now, we have only mobilized the 6 great sage emperors. If the 8 great sage emperors were to freeze space at the same time, I do not believe that this Qin Yu would be able to break through it." "Enough." Duanmu Yun frowned and said, "Brother Zhou Hua, even mobilizing the 6 great sage emperors was unable to trap Qin Yu. If we were to mobilize the 8 great sage emperors, how could we not be able to trap him? How would we, the 8 great sage emperors, put our faces down? Let's just give up on this matter. The worst result would only be another ascender power in the divine realm. There is not much difference between 3 ascender powers and 4. From the perspective of Duanmu Yun, Shen Tian, Tang Lan and Mu Qin, the relationship between this Qin Yu and them was not too bad. After all, the one that Qin Yu was truly hostile against was the Zhou family. After fighting against Qin Yu, they had all come to know of Qin Yu's strength. In terms of attack power, Qin Yu's main body and his clone, not a single sage emperor would be able to defeat Qin Yu. Furthermore, Qin Yu also possessed the strength to shatter the frozen space. This sort of enemy was someone that they could not kill even if they wanted to. It was best to not provoke him. The muscles in Zhou Hua's eyes were slightly twitching as he stared at the 4 people before him. "Brother Zhou Hua, farewell." Duanmu Yun cupped his hands slightly. Then, he disappeared into thin air. Zhou Hua's expression immediately became even uglier. "Brother Mu, Tang Lan, Brother Shentu, could it be that you all are also going to give up?" Zhou Hua hurriedly said, "It's practically impossible to kill Qin Yu. In that case, why should we waste our efforts in vain? If Brother Zhou Hua is able to think of a method to kill Qin Yu with absolute certainty, we will definitely assist you." Tang Lan lightly smiled. After that, she waved her sleeve and teleported away. Shen Tian and Mu Qin also cupped their hands to Zhou Hua with a smile. Ignoring Zhou Hua's ugly expression, they still said some courteous words and then teleported away. In an instant, 4 of the 6 great sage emperors had left. Only Zhou Hua and Zhong Fan remained. "Brother Zhong Fan?" Zhou Hua looked to Zhong Fan. At this moment, Zhong Fan's heart was extremely complicated. The strength that Qin Yu had displayed had already completely shocked him. Especially since Qin Yu possessed the ability to craft first-rate Grand Mist spiritual treasures. Zhong Fan clearly remembered that the sword that Zhong Li used to block his attack was still that purple rain dress. That sword, it actually managed to block my attack that easily. It is most definitely not a second-rate Grand Mist spiritual treasure. That purple rain dress, even after receiving my stick strike, Li'er was actually completely undamaged. It is also impossible for that purple rain dress to be a second-rate Grand Mist spiritual treasure. Could it be that they're both first-rate Grand Mist spiritual treasures? Just thinking about it caused Zhong Fan to be shocked. His daughter actually possessed 2 first-rate Grand Mist spiritual treasures. Qin Yu himself possessed that spear. There was also that scepter 10,000 willows and that gauze feather blade. Exactly how many first-rate Grand Mist spiritual treasures does this Qin Yu possess? Could it be that he is able to easily craft a first-rate Grand Mist spiritual treasure? Zhang Fan was filled with resentment. Zhang Fan was unable to deny that at this moment, he also felt a bit of regret in the depths of his heart. Although he had promised Zhou Hua that the Thunder Punishment Exalted Celestial could help him once. However, merely helping him once would at the very most only give him a 30% chance of becoming an Exalted Celestial. If Qin Yu were to become my son-in-law, with Qin Yu's strength and my daughter being a God King. On top of that, he possesses so many first-rate Grand Mist spiritual treasures. With such a large power, I would be able to obtain an absolute advantage in the competition for the Exalted Celestial Mountain's spiritual treasures. Such a thought flashed through Zhang Fan's mind. If Qin Yu were to become my son-in-law, second brother's relationship with me ought to be better. Li Er would also continue to stay by my side. Qin Yu was truly regretting in his heart. However, there was no medicine for regret in this world. Brother Zhang Fan? Zhou Hua shouted again. Zhang Fan woke up. He immediately discarded that thought from earlier. As a sage emperor, since he had made his decision and chosen this path, he should not regret it. Brother Zhou Hua, what's the matter? Zhang Fan looked to Zhou Hua. Zhou Hua sighed helplessly. You've also seen the scene earlier. When those 4 sage emperors saw Qin Yu's remarkable ability, they all decided to retreat. It is impossible for them to kill Qin Yu. It is normal for them to not be willing to waste their efforts. Zhang Fan said with a light smile. Zhou Hua looked to Zhang Fan. Brother Zhang Fan, you've seen the strength of this Qin Yu. It is indeed extremely difficult to kill him. However, this Qin Yu has slandered our Thunder Punishment City in every possible way. No matter what, I am unable to tolerate this. Brother Zhang Fan, are you willing to help our Thunder Punishment City? Brother Zhou Hua, please rest assured. Zhang Fan nodded and said, if you plan to attack this Qin Yu, you merely have to inform me. However, Brother Zhou Hua, do you have a method to take care of Qin Yu? Zhou Hua immediately had a smile on his face. In that case, I must truly thank Brother Zhang Fan. As for the method to take care of Qin Yu, in another several hundred years, the Exalted Celestial Mountain will also descend. If we are still unable to take care of Qin Yu within several hundred years, then we can only use the descent of the Exalted Celestial Mountain. The descent of the Exalted Celestial Mountain, I reckon that the majority of the God Kings would go crazy. At that time, it would not be hard to frame Qin Yu. Exalted Celestial Mountain. Zhang Fan also smiled. The descent of the Exalted Celestial Mountain from 6 quadrillion years ago had caused the death of many God Kings. One must know that the death of God Kings was an extremely rare occurrence. However, the descent of the Exalted Celestial Mountain would cause a large number of God Kings to disregard everything. To be able to reach the God King level, practically all of the God Kings possessed a burning desire for the final stage of cultivation, the Exalted Celestial. Desire was something that would cause one to go crazy. The battle in the Southern Sea region of the Divine Realm was something that only a few people knew about. Qin Yu also did not spread the news. The 6 great sage emperors would also not expose themselves. Thus, a large number of ordinary people in the Divine Realm did not know about it. Although ordinary people did not know about it, some of the higher echelons knew about it. For example, Zhou Xian. The alliance of the sage emperors has already been broken. If we were to only rely on our Thunder Punishment City, how would we be able to kill Qin Yu? Even with the addition of the utmost North Sage Emperor Zhang Fan, I fear that it would still not be enough. Zhou Xian stood on the city walls of the Thunder Punishment City. As he looked at the countless bolts of lightning before him, he thought to himself, this Qin Yu, his strength is actually on par with the sage emperors. He might even be stronger than them. This, even if he is a genius, it would still be impossible for him to reach such a level. It's only been less than 20,000 years. After Zhou Xian heard his imperial father's narration of the battle, he was completely shocked. Qin Yu's strength was actually this powerful. In a one-on-one battle, even the sage emperors would not have any hope of winning against him. Furthermore, Qin Yu also possessed the strange ability to break through spatial freezing. Is this still that foolish brat from the mortal realm from back then? Zhou Xian's heart was filled with powerlessness. At this moment, Zhou Xian had already felt that Qin Yu was high above him. He could only look up to Qin Yu. Regardless of how unsatisfied he felt, it was still useless. The disparity between them was too enormous. When facing Qin Yu, the jealousy and resentment in Zhou Xian's heart appeared to be extremely laughable. Strength, strength. Zhou Xian frowned. Immediately, his feet moved. He turned into a ray of light and flew toward his residence. When he arrived at his residence, he merely said coldly, "From today onwards, no one is allowed to disturb me." After that, Zhou Xian began a long period of seclusion training. Chapter 627. In the dim room, only a single red candle was burning, and the flame was gently swaying. Thunder Nightmare God King Zhou Wulian stared at the red candle without blinking. The red candle grew shorter and shorter until it was extinguished. Sigh. After the lights went out, a long sigh sounded in the dark room. After a long time, a red candle lit up in the dark room and continued to burn. No one knew how many red candles were burning. Third brother, hurry up and come to the Sage Emperor Palace. Northwest Sage Emperor Zhou's voice suddenly sounded in Zhou Wulian's mind. Zhou Wulian's slightly drooping eyes suddenly opened as a bolt of lightning flashed past. As for the red candle that had been burning to a certain degree, it directly turned into nothingness. Creak. Pushing the door open, Zhou Wulian looked up at the sky. There was an endless amount of lightning flickering in the sky. The sky of the Thunder Punishment City was always filled with countless lightning bolts. Although Zhou's voice transmission sounded urgent, Zhou Wulian was not anxious at all. He slowly left his residence and walked towards the Sage Emperor's palace, until they reached the entrance of the Sacred Emperor Palace. "It's Jean, A gentle voice came from the Saint Emperor's palace. The originally dispirited Zhou Wulian's aura suddenly changed. He quickened his pace and stepped into the Saint Emperor Palace. In the main hall of the Saint Royal Palace sat a silver-haired old man in a purple robe. This old man had a pair of eyes as sharp as an eagle's. His lips were thin and slightly purple. Every single strand of silver hair shone with a transparent light. If one didn't look carefully, they wouldn't notice it at all. Between his eyebrows, there was a scarlet mole. The Northwest Saint Emperor Zhou Hua, the Thunder Martial God King Zhou Tong, and Zhou Wulian's son, Zhou Ran, were standing below the main hall. At this moment, the attitudes of these three great God Kings were extremely humble and respectful. "Father." Zhou Wulian bowed and said. This silver-haired old man was one of the Divine Realm's three great exalted celestials, the Thunder Punishment Exalted Celestial. Just by looking at his face and eyes, one could tell that Empyrean Thunder Punishment was an extremely strict and callous person. Jean, The Thunder Punishment Exalted Celestial faced Zhou Wulian with a smile on his face. Why did the Thunder Punishment Exalted Celestial address Zhou Wulian as Shang? In fact, Zhou Wulian's real name was Zhou Yan. The Thunder Punishment Exalted Celestial had 3 sons. The eldest son, Zhou Hua, the second son, Zhou Tong, and the third son, Zhou Yan. However, 6 quadrillion years ago, Zhou Yan changed his name to Zhou Wulian. "Father, may I know why you have come back this time?" Zhou Wulian said indifferently. However, there was a trace of humility in his eyes. Empyrean Thunder Punishment glanced at his third son and sighed inwardly. Empyrean Thunder Punishment was well aware that his third son's heart had long since died, that there was nothing left to live for. There was probably nothing that could excite him anymore. Every time he thought about how his son had changed his name to Wulian, he felt very helpless. The main reason why I have returned this time around is because of the sudden appearance of a Qin Yu in the Divine Realm. I've heard that this Qin Yu has caused our Thunder Punishment City to be in a very sorry state. Is this true? The Thunder Punishment Exalted Celestial swept his gaze over the 4 people below. A look of shame appeared on Zhou Hua's face, and he immediately said, Father, this is indeed true. The Thunder Martial God King, Zhou Tong, said in a clear voice, Father, according to Zhou Xian, this Qin Yu should be a nobody in the mortal realm 20,000 years ago. Yet now, he is able to refine a first-rate grand mist spiritual treasure. Furthermore, his strength is extremely, extremely strange. Ha! How could such strength be strange? The Thunder Punishment Exalted Celestial said with a light smile. Normally, the Thunder Punishment Exalted Celestial would not bother to concern himself with the matters of the Thunder Punishment City. The reason for that was because he believed that no one would dare to provoke the Thunder Punishment City. Merely, when he returned to the divine realm from the lower realms, he had occasionally heard about the matters of the Thunder Punishment City. Only then did he know about the general situation. Grandfather, Zhou Ran said respectfully, this Qin Yu did not become a god king. However, the most puzzling matter is, this Qin Yu is capable of teleportation, and is even capable of time acceleration. Capable of teleportation and time acceleration? Did not become a god king? The Thunder Punishment Exalted Celestial nodded slightly. However, there was not much surprise on his face. Most astonishingly, he was able to break through the spatial freezing that the 6 great sage emperors had simultaneously used and directly caused space to collapse. Zhou Ran's words contained astonishment. Oh! The Thunder Punishment Exalted Celestial's eyelids opened. He was finally surprised. Lord Father, you seem to have some understanding of Qin Yu? Zhou Hua asked. The Thunder Punishment Exalted Celestial nodded and said, Of course. Not long ago, that Qin Yu stepped onto the top of the Mountain Sea Palace's heaven-connecting flight of steps. Thus, I naturally noticed him. Because of that, I even discussed matters regarding this Qin Yu with my eldest senior brother and third junior brother. However, according to what eldest senior brother said, there is a reason for his existence. There is no need to investigate it thoroughly. Floating feathers exalted celestial? Zhou Hua gulped. Then he asked, Lord Father, could that floating feathers exalted celestial have some sort of relationship with Qin Yu? If the floating feathers exalted celestial attaches great importance to this Qin Yu, our Thunder Punishment City might as well endure this humiliation. Endure? The Thunder Punishment Exalted Celestial snorted coldly. The red mole between his eyebrows actually shined. You all can rest assured. I have already asked eldest senior brother. This Qin Yu does not have any relationship with him. However you all wish to deal with Qin Yu, feel free to do so. If it is truly impossible, this old fellow can also take action. Once those words were said, the 4 great god kings in the Northwest Sage Emperor's palace were all startled. Even the Thunder Nightmare God King Zhou Wulian looked to his father in shock. The Thunder Punishment Exalted Celestial said coldly, In this vast cosmos, the Thunder Punishment City is my root. It is also your root. No matter what, no one is allowed to insult the Thunder Punishment City and trample upon the dignity of the Thunder Punishment City. Yes, Lord Father. At this moment, Zhou Hua was overjoyed. With the Thunder Punishment Exalted Celestial saying those words, he was completely at ease. Even if they were no match for the Floating Feathers Exalted Celestial, wouldn't their victory be certain if their father were to take action? There was simply no need to doubt the strength of the Thunder Punishment Exalted Celestial. Suddenly, the Thunder Punishment Exalted Celestial muttered, however. The 4 great god kings below all quietly listened. With the word however, it would appear that it would not be that easy for the Thunder Punishment Exalted Celestial to take action against Qin Yu. However, eldest senior brother had reminded me that the Exalted Celestial Mountain is about to descend. During this period of time, the descent of the Exalted Celestial Mountain will continue until the birth of the new Exalted Celestial. During this period of time, I am not allowed to take action against anyone so as to not destroy the balance of the competition for the new Exalted Celestial. The Thunder Punishment Exalted Celestial looked to the 4 god kings below. You all should understand what I mean. If you want me to take action against Qin Yu, there are only 2 stages. The first is before the descent of the Exalted Celestial Mountain, and the second is after the birth of the new Exalted Celestial. As for the period of time in between, I am not allowed to take action. Else, eldest senior brother and third junior brother will come and cause trouble for me. Zhou Hua, Zhou Tong and Zhou Ran all heaved a sigh of relief. Lord Father, we will definitely take care of that Qin Yu before the descent of the exalted celestial mountain. If we are unable to take care of him, it would not be too late to trouble Lord Father then. Zhou Hua said respectfully. The thunder punishment exalted celestial nodded. Remember, do not try to show off too much. The thunder punishment exalted celestial instructed. Yes, Father, Grandfather. The four great god kings below all bowed and replied, Amen, I will be staying at that old place during this period of time. If you all have nothing important, do not come and disturb me. The thunder punishment exalted celestial said indifferently. Then, he took a glance at Zhou Wulian. Then, he disappeared from the palace hall. After the thunder punishment exalted celestial disappeared, the four great god kings straightened their bodies. Good. Zhou Hua smacked his fists together. Excitement filled his eyes. Haha, with Father's words, there is no need for me to be overly fearful. Right, what Father said is correct. No one can trample on the dignity of our thunder punishment city. Beside him, Zhou Tong and Zhou Ran also had joyous expressions on their faces. This time around, that Qin Yu is undoubtedly going to die, Zhou Tong said with a smile on his face. All of these god kings knew very well. 3 great exalted celestials. Any one of them would possess a might that surpassed the combined might of the 8 great sage emperors. Absolute invincibility. Below the exalted celestial realm, no one would be able to shake an exalted celestial. Big brother, second brother, Ran, I will be returning first. If you all need my help in taking care of that Qin Yu, you can just tell me. After he finished saying those words, Zhou Wulian waved his sleeve, turned around, and slowly left. Zhou Ran looked to his father's desolate back view. Helplessness filled his heart. At the moment when the thunder punishment exalted celestial descended upon the thunder punishment city, within the violet mystic mansion on the violet mystic star of the violet mystic star, Qin Yu and a group of people were extremely happy. Jump horse, checkmate. The moment Qin Yu moved his horse, he immediately laughed out loud. Fei, you must be dumbfounded, right? With 2 horses crossed, you're dead. At this moment, Qin Yu was laughing extremely happily. Ho Fei looked at the game of chess in front of him. He was so anxious that he was scratching his ears and cheeks. He even looked to Kuro beside him. Kuro was also frowning with a helpless expression on his face. In chess, even if the 2 of you were to join hands, you would still not be a match for me, Qin Yu said confidently. Ho Fei curled his lips. Big brother, if you have the ability, don't always play chess with me and Mixed Hairbird. Go and play chess with Big Sister Lier. Yesterday, you played 10 games with Big Sister Lier. How many games did you win? Qin Yu was instantly speechless. 10 games. He won 0 games. If he had not been so miserably ravaged by Lier, why would he bother to ravage the 2 of you? Monkey, where's Uncle Lon? With a thought, Qin Yu could see the entire universe in his heart. Uncle Lon is actually not in the violet mystic universe? Oh, that's right. When you were still in bed with Lier this morning, Uncle Lon told me that he had returned to Floating Snow City. To be continued. If you want to know what happened next, please log on to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 628. Floating Snow City? That's right, Uncle Lon has not returned for some time already. Qin Yu nodded and said. Ho Fei nodded and said. I reckon that even if Master were to return, he would not be very happy. In that floating snow city, only Zhang Yan and some other Zhang clan's descendants are worthy of Uncle Lan's concern. As for the others, I reckon Master would not bother to care about them. That's right. Qin Yu nodded and said. The current floating snow city was indeed not attractive to Zhonglon. If there were people that he could not let go of, then it would likely only be those old servants of the wood mansion that had followed Zhonglon for trillions of years. Big brother, when are we going to set up a base in the divine realm? Right now, we have you, Big Sister Li Er and God King Yi Feng, 3 great experts. Mixed Hair Bird and I can also be considered as one. Oh, that's right, there's also Uncle Lon. With our strength, we would also be able to take root in the divine realm. Ho Fei asked expectantly. What Ho Fei looked forward to the most was to occupy a place in the divine realm and become a power of the divine realm. To be on equal footing with the 8 great sacred lands and the 3 great ascender powers. There's no rush. Let's wait for Li Er's child to be born, Qin Yu said with a smile. Qin Yu. A voice sounded. A person walked in from outside the garden. It was Yi Feng that Qin Yu had brought back from the divine realm. Ever since Yi Feng discovered that Qin Yu actually possessed the remarkable ability to break through the spatial freezing, he understood that Qin Yu possessed sufficient qualifications to fight against the 8 great sage emperors. Thus, Yi Feng decided to help Qin Yu. After all, ever since Zhuo Qiumei died, Yi Feng's days had been extremely bitter. To be able to avenge Zhuo Qiumei, Yi Feng was also looking forward to it. Earlier, he had only thought that Qin Yu and Li Er would only be throwing away their lives if they went to avenge Zhuo Qiumei. Uncle Yi Feng. When Qin Yu saw Yi Feng, he immediately stood up. This Uncle Yi Feng, Qin Yu followed Zhong Li and called him that. Oh, are you guys playing chess? Yi Feng smiled and looked at the chessboard. Ho Fei immediately waved his hands and messed up the chessboard. Then, Ho Fei laughed dryly at Yi Feng. Hee hee, God King Yi Feng, how are you? Nice to meet you too. Yi Feng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. At this moment, Qin Yu suddenly recalled the first-rate Grand Mist spiritual treasure scepter, 10,000 willows, that he had forged. A treasure should be given to an expert, especially an expert that he trusted. Uncle Yi Feng, this scepter is the first-rate Grand Mist spiritual treasure that I have refined. I'll give it to you. With a flip of his hand, Qin Yu took out the scepter. God King Yi Feng looked at the scarlet scepter. Then, his gaze locked onto the smear of green at the tip of the scepter. First-rate Grand Mist spiritual treasure? Yi Feng was astonished. He had also heard that Qin Yu was the new craftsman god. However, when a first-rate Grand Mist spiritual treasure appeared before him, especially when that Grand Mist spiritual treasure was given to him, Yi Feng was truly astonished. In merely a short moment, Yi Feng's state of mind calmed down. Qin Yu, I accept your kind intentions. Forget about this first-rate Grand Mist spiritual treasure. Yi Feng said with a smile. Qin Yu could not help but admire this Yi Feng. To be able to refuse a first-rate Grand Mist spiritual treasure, this Yi Feng was truly worthy of admiration. Uncle Yi Feng, there is no need to decline. The only God King expert on my side is Uncle Lon. Uncle Yi Feng, there is also Li Er. Li Er and Uncle Lon both possess first-rate Grand Mist spiritual treasures. You should accept this scepter. Qin Yu said promptly. Yi Feng lightly smiled and shook his head. His attitude was extremely firm. There's no need. Qin Yu, I already possess a first-rate Grand Mist spiritual treasure. This vast territory is already sufficient for me. Yi Feng said with a smile. First-rate Grand Mist spiritual treasure, vast territory. This caused Qin Yu to recall the scene in the sky above the southern boundary archipelago. At the moment of crisis, Yi Feng had directly used the vast territory to trap the 6 great sage emperors. In an instant, he had trapped the 6 great sage emperors for roughly 10 breaths of time. One must know that the 6 great sage emperors had joined hands. Yet, they were still trapped for 10 breaths of time. If it was only a single sage emperor, he would likely be unable to escape in a short period of time. From this, one could imagine how powerful a first-rate Grand Mist spiritual treasure was. Uncle Yi Feng, that vast territory cannot be considered to be an offensive Grand Mist spiritual treasure. It is only used to trap people. Qin Yu said promptly. Yi Feng shook his head and smiled. It is sufficient to be able to trap people. With this vast territory trapping people, ordinary god kings would not be able to escape at all. Actually, sometimes trapping people is even more torturous than killing people. Qin Yu felt extremely helpless. This god king Yi Feng refused to accept it. What should he do? Qin Yu, there is an even more important use for this first-rate grand mist spiritual treasure of yours. Yi Feng suddenly said. An even more important use? Qin Yu looked to Yi Feng in surprise. Could it be that you want to use this first-rate grand mist spiritual treasure to invite other hidden god kings? I would not be at ease if I were to give it to them. Qin Yu felt that it was better to give treasures to people that he could be at ease with. Yi Feng smiled and said, Indeed, I want you to invite a god king. As for this hidden god king, you can be at ease. The reason for that is because she is a Mei's older sister, Zhuaqiulin. Zhuaqiulin? Qin Yu was startled. The god king of life had an older sister? Zhuaqiulin? Uncle Yi Feng, you're talking about Aunt Zhuaqiumei's older sister. Why are you mentioning her? At this moment, Zhongli walked in from outside. Qin Yu came to a sudden realization. In terms of who was the most familiar with Zhuaqiumei's matters, it was naturally Zhongli. Lier, Uncle Yi Feng wants me to take this first-rate grand mist spiritual treasure and invite Zhuaqiulin. Qin Yu said. Zhongli frowned and said, According to my memories, although this Zhuaqiulin is Aunt Zhuaqiumei's older sister, the relationship between the two sisters is extremely bad. When they are together, they are always at odds with each other. To have Zhuaqiulin avenge Aunt Zhuaqiumei, this. Evidently, Zhongli was not confident. At odds? Yi Feng said in sudden realization. No wonder all these years, I have never seen a Mei visit her older sister, Zhuaqiulin. I have only heard her mention her older sister, Zhuaqiulin, once. She is a hidden god king. Yi Feng knew practically nothing about Zhuaqiulin. He only knew that Zhuaqiulin was Zhuaqiumei's older sister. Little girl Zhongli, do you know how powerful this Zhuaqiulin is? Yi Feng looked to Zhongli. Zhongli muttered to herself and said, Amen, Zhuaqiulin is the same as Aunt Zhuaqiumei. Both of them have thoroughly researched the soul. Her strength is not inferior to Aunt Zhuaqiumei's. In fact, she is slightly stronger. Slightly stronger? Yi Feng was astonished. Back then, Zhuaqiumei was surrounded and killed by the sage emperors. Naturally, it was because Zhuaqiumei was extremely powerful. Otherwise, how could she have been surrounded and killed? Zhuaqiumei's strength was already close to that of a sage emperor. This Zhuaqiulin was actually slightly stronger? According to some of Aunt Zhuaqiumei's memories, that Zhuaqiulin has another title. She is called God King of Death. Zhongli said solemnly. Qin Yu, Yi Feng, and even the nearby Hou Fei and Kuro were all astonished. God King of Death? Just this title alone was not something that ordinary god kings would dare to call themselves. Zhongli continued, Aunt Zhuaqiumei and her older sister both have thoroughly researched the soul. Aunt Zhuaqiumei researches the Tao of life. Through studying the soul, she knows how to save people better. As for her older sister, she researches the Tao of death. Through studying the soul, she knows how to kill people more easily. Qin Yu, Yi Feng, Hou Fei, and Kuro could not help but feel astonished. Zhuaqiumei was capable of easily repairing the soul. That was why she was called the God King of Life. Then what about her older sister? Both of them have thoroughly researched the soul. How powerful would her methods of killing people be? Killing people was easy. Saving people was easy. The same method, when used to kill people, would be even more terrifying. There's actually such a perverted person who researches the soul just to kill people? Hou Fei could not help but cry out in alarm. Qin Yu slightly frowned. Lier, then tell me, if we were to invite this God King of Death, would she help us? Zhongli muttered to herself for a moment before saying, Amen, it's hard to say. From what I know of Aunt Zhuaqiumei's memories, Aunt Swachome and her older sister were very close when they were young. Only later on, as they grew stronger and stronger, they became complete opposites. Logically speaking, they should still have some sisterly affection. But in that memory, Zhuoqiulin was too fierce. Zhongli recalled the scene in Zhuoqiome's memories. Oh. Qinyu began to ponder. After a moment, Qinyu said, "Li'er, do you know where that Zhuoqiulin is?" "I know. She is at the pole of the North Sea. There is a floating ice continent at the pole of the North Sea. She is the supreme ruler of that place." Zhongli immediately said. In Qinyu's mind, the locations of the dozen or so hidden god-kings of the divine realm appeared. At the pole of the North Sea, there was indeed a hidden god-king. It's just that the aura of that hidden god-king was too obscure. Furthermore, it was filled with an aura of death. So it's really her. Qinyu's eyes lit up. "Li'er, how about coming with me to the pole of the North Sea for a tour?" Qinyu said with a smile. Zhongli smiled brightly and nodded in agreement. Chapter 629. The continent of the divine realm was surrounded by an endless ocean. In the northernmost region of the Northern Sea, there was a floating continent of ice. This continent had a circumference of 10,000 miles. In the Northern Sea, it could be considered a relatively large ice island. Cold air lingered on this ice island all year round. Occasionally, cold wind would blow past. A ray of light of daytime penetrated through the lingering cold air with great difficulty. Vaguely, two figures could be seen walking over from afar. They were Qinyu and Zhongli, who were wearing white embroidered gowns. Qinyu and Zhongli teleported to this ice island. They were not in a hurry to find Zhuoqiulin. Instead, they were admiring the scenery of the ice island. "This place is truly cold. Ordinary deities would probably have to wear divine armor to withstand the cold," Qinyu said with a smile. He held Li'er's hand with one hand and Li'er with the other. The land and other buildings on the ice island were all made of nearly transparent ice blocks. These ice blocks were located in the northernmost region of the divine realm. They had not melted for hundreds of millions of years. The hardness of these ice blocks was definitely not inferior to ordinary hard stones. Under the reflection of the light of daytime, the ice blocks on the ground of the ice island emitted a gorgeous multicolored light. It was as if they were in a fantasy world. "It's truly beautiful. It would be great to live here." Zhongli looked at her surroundings. Her eyes were filled with joy. "Big brother you, aren't we going to find Zhuoqiulin? Why aren't we going there directly?" Zhongli asked. Ever since she set foot on this ice island, she had this question in her heart. However, the scenery along the way was too beautiful. Thus, she did not ask. Qinyu smiled and said, "The scenery here is very good. That's why I'm letting you enjoy it for a while longer." Zhongli immediately smiled. Qinyu shook his head and said, "Actually, I did not go to Zhuoqiulin's place immediately. The main reason is that I wanted to ask the heavenly deities on this ice island about Zhuoqiulin. After all, we know too little about Zhuoqiulin." Zhongli thought for a moment. She also felt that Qinyu was very thoughtful. After all, we're not here to fight. We're here to invite Zhuoqiulin. Naturally, we can't offend her. Qinyu smiled and led Li'er forward. The path that Qinyu was taking was also planned out. There was a high-level heavenly deity on this path. This high-level heavenly deity was also an expert second only to Zhuoqiulin on the ice island. Qinyu believed that the god of heaven, who had been Zhuoqiulin's neighbor for so many years, should know a lot. After a cup of tea's worth of time, the lingering cold air gradually dissipated. A mansion made of hundreds of millions of years old ice and green boulders appeared in front of him. The mansion wasn't very big, only a few hundred meters in radius. The mansion had the words White Ice Mansion written on it. The master of the White Ice Mansion, Bai Yiju, was extremely prestigious on the island of ice. Although the island master of the entire island of ice had yet to be decided, the vast majority of the residents of the Island of Ice had already considered Bai Iju as the island master. Bai Iju was very powerful and very friendly. As for the White Ice Mansion, there were not a lot of people. There were only a dozen or so people in the White Ice Mansion. The people of the White Ice Mansion all knew very well that their Lord Mansion Master loved to drink tea while looking at the ice flowers every morning. In the rear garden of the White Ice Mansion, there were all kinds of flowers carved from ice that appeared to be real. Under the illumination of the light of day, they were even more beautiful than real flowers. The white-haired and white-clothed Bai Iju was leisurely sitting on an agarwood chair. He was holding a teacup with steam lingering around it and enjoying the tranquility. When Bai Iju recalled the decision he made back then, he began to think that he was very wise. If I had truly stayed in the Thunder Punishment City back then, I fear that I would not have the leisurely life I have today. Bai Iju sighed in his heart. Merely, although the days are good, the God King of Death in the depths of the Ice Island is the greatest trouble. Upon thinking of the crownless king of the Northern Sea, Bai Iju felt a bit helpless. Although the God King of Death living in the depths of the Ice Island would not wantonly massacre the people of the Ice Island, the existence of the God King of Death had caused the people of the Ice Island to tremble in fear. However, this God King of Death is not someone who has gone crazy from grief. As long as one does not step into her region, she will not kill anyone. Bai Iju smiled helplessly. If the God King of Death was truly someone who had gone crazy from grief, then it was likely that all of the residents of the Ice Island would have already fled. Truly leisurely and elegant. A simple and elegant voice sounded beside Bai Iju's ears. Bai Iju was shocked. To be able to approach him, a high-level heavenly deity, without him noticing at all, what sort of strength did this person possess? Bai Iju turned around to look. He saw a pair of young man and woman wearing white embroidered gowns walking over with smiles on their faces. These two people are so powerful. Bai Iju discovered that even though they were standing before him, he was unable to sense their strength at all. Such an enormous disparity caused Bai Iju to be shocked. He even had a guess that the two people before him were both God Kings. However, he did not dare to believe it. Immediately, Bai Iju stood up. With a slightly respectful tone, he said, "I am Bai Iju. May I know why the two of you have come to my little mansion? If there is anything, this Iju will definitely help you with all his might." As he was asking those questions, Bai Iju had already memorized the appearances of the two people before him. The two of them are so intimate. Furthermore, that woman's belly is bulging. It is likely that she is pregnant. It would appear that the two of them are husband and wife. A God King couple? Is there such a thing in the divine realm? Bai Iju thought in his heart. Chinyu smiled and asked, "I wish to ask about the matters regarding this ice island." Bai Iju promptly said, "Please feel free to ask. This Iju has lived on this ice island for hundreds of millions of years. There shouldn't be anything that this Iju doesn't know about. Do you know Zhuacholin?" Zhongli directly asked. Zhuacholin? Bai Iju was startled. He had truly never heard of this name. After all, the God King of Death had practically never left her mansion. Furthermore, Zhuacholin did not have the patience to tell her name to these heavenly deities. "She is the God King that lives below the ice island," Qin Yu said. Bai Iju's complexion suddenly changed. "Are the two of you talking about the God King of Death?" "That's right. Could you tell us about this God King of Death in detail?" "There is no need to worry about the God King of Death. She does not know that we are in contact with you," Qin Yu asked with a smile. Bai Iju's complexion relaxed. He then said, "The two of you, this Iju is not worried about the God King of Death knowing that the two of you are in contact with this Iju. Merely, this Iju is a bit worried for the two of you." "What's the matter?" Qin Yu looked at Bai Iju. Bai Iju immediately opened his mouth. "Speaking of this God King of Death, I reckon that not many people know how long she has been in this ice island. However, although this God King of Death has a reputation, she is still someone who abides by her promises." "Abides by her promises? What promises?" Qin Yu immediately asked. Bai Iju nodded and said, "A very long time ago, at that time, I had yet to arrive at this ice island. At that time, there was a rumor that spread throughout the ice island. The God King of Death had promised that as long as one did not step into the range of her ice mansion hell, no one would be harmed. She would not harm anyone from this ice island. However, once one stepped into the range of her ice mansion hell, one would definitely die. In the past, there were people who didn't believe her. However, from all the people that we know of in history, all those that entered the range of her ice mansion hell died." A trace of shock flashed through Bai Iju's eyes. This God King of Death's mansion is filled with a layer of black aura. It's extremely easy to recognize. Merely, that layer of black aura is rolling about at all times. It would occasionally spread and occasionally shrink. I had once personally witnessed that when that black aura suddenly spread, a mid-level heavenly deity accidentally fell into it. Once that mid-level heavenly deity was surrounded by that black aura, he immediately fell to the ground. After the black aura shrank back, a good friend of mine and I rapidly snatched back that mid-level heavenly deity's body. However, we discovered that this mid-level heavenly deity's soul was already gone. Since his soul was gone, he was naturally dead. Qin Yu and Zhang Li glanced at each other. However, they were not too surprised. They both knew very well that this God King of Death was the same as the God King of Life. She had thoroughly researched the soul. The God King of Life was capable of repairing one's soul. As for the God King of Death, she was capable of destroying one's soul. For her to easily kill a mid-level heavenly deity like this, it was nothing special. Merely, I don't know if this God King of Death had deliberately killed this mid-level heavenly deity or if that black aura had automatically killed this mid-level heavenly deity. Qin Yu thought in his heart. If the God King of Death had deliberately killed a mid-level heavenly deity, then this could not be considered to be very powerful. However, if merely the black aura surrounding the God King of Death's ice mansion underworld was capable of easily killing a mid-level heavenly deity, this was truly too frightening. Sir and lady, Iju knows that the two of you are both people with great abilities. Merely, this God King of Death is a heartless and ruthless person. What she loves the most is killing people. She especially loves killing experts. Bai Iju said solemnly. Have the two of you discovered that there is not a single person on the several thousand islands within 100 million miles of the ice island? Qin Yu exclaimed in surprise. If Bai Iju hadn't mentioned it, Qin Yu wouldn't have noticed it. It was very normal for there to be numerous islands in the Northern Sea. The majority of the islands possessed a lot of residents. However, the majority of the islands surrounding the ice island were completely empty. Although the God King of Death had promised that as long as the people from the ice island do not enter the range of her ice mansion underworld, she would not kill the people from the ice island. However, the people outside of the ice island were all killed by her. Furthermore, she would kill them every year. As she continued to kill, the uninhabited region surrounding the ice island grew larger and larger. In that case, the two of you can return to the divine realm. Zhang Li said. Bai Iju smiled bitterly, shook his head and said, "We, the people from the ice island, have never dared to leave the ice island. That's because this place is truly too far away from the divine realm's continent. Not to mention the divine realm's continent, merely the uninhabited region surrounding the ice island is something that we would not be able to pass through in a year. As for us, we are unable to fly through this uninhabited region. Once the God King of Death decides to kill people, we who leave the ice island will undoubtedly die." Qin Yu and Zhang Li suddenly realized. No matter how powerful a heavenly deity might be, they would still not be able to match up to a God King. Bai Iju and the other heavenly deities were unable to teleport and could only fly. It was simply impossible for them to fly out of the uninhabited region surrounding the ice island in a short period of time. However, the two of you do not have to worry about us. We can be said to be living a peaceful life on the ice island. The size of the ice island is not bad and the population is not small. Furthermore, the area of the God King of Death's ice mansion underworld is not large. As long as we avoid it, there will not be any danger to our lives. Bai Yiju said with a smile. Qin Yu and Zhang Li took a glance at each other. They now had some understanding of the God King of Death, Zhuo, whom they had never met before. Although this Zhuo was cold and heartless, she at least kept her promise. Then, we will take our leave. Qin Yu immediately said. He did not wish to ask anymore because Qin Yu could tell that very few people in the entire ice island knew about Zhuo. Bai Yiju promptly bowed and saluted. Qin Yu and Zhang Li turned around and were about to leave when Bai Yiju suddenly spoke. The two of you, Yiju suddenly recalled a legend regarding the God King of Death. Oh, what is it? Qin Yu turned around. Bai Yiju promptly said. Before Yiju arrived at the ice island, there was a legend on the ice island. It said that the God King of Death had once killed a God King. Qin Yu was startled. Killed a God King? God Kings were capable of teleportation. It was not that easy to kill them. Later on, another God King came and seriously injured the God King of Death. Since then, the God King of Death had always stayed in the Ice Palace Hell and rarely came out to kill. Bai Yiju said. Of course, this is only a legend. Yiju does not dare to confirm the authenticity of this legend. Qin Yu nodded and smiled. Thank you. Immediately after, Qin Yu brought Zhang Li and teleported away from the White Ice Palace. They arrived at the central region of the Ice Island. The central region of the Ice Island was the only uninhabited region in the entire Ice Island. This place was filled with black aura. It was definitely a place of death. As for the God King of Death, Zhuo, Qin Yu could clearly sense that Zhuo was staying in an extremely deep place under the Ice Island. The thickness of the entire Ice Island was actually over 100,000 li. The surface of the Ice Island was only 10,000 li in circumference. However, the surface of the Ice Island was getting thicker and thicker. When the bottom of the Ice Island was over 100,000 li in circumference. As for Zhuo, she was staying in an ice palace several thousand li below the surface of the Ice Island. To be continued. If you want to know what happened next, please log on to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 630. What a strange aura. Qin Yu and Zhang Li arrived before the black aura like a celestial couple from a painting. Seeing the black aura expanding and contracting, Qin Yu could not help but sigh. In the eyes of the residents of the Ice Island, the rolling black aura before them represented death. Brother Yu, this black aura is a special kind of energy. It is the complete opposite of my elemental life. To be exact, it is even more special than my elemental life. Zhang Li frowned. Zhang Li was now the new God King of Life. Her understanding of souls was the same as Zhuo. Li you said that this black aura is even more powerful? Qin Yu was completely clueless about this. Zhang Li nodded affirmatively. My elemental life is not only capable of healing souls, it is also capable of healing the injuries of the body. As for this black aura, it is completely focused on the soul. It does not possess the slightest bit of offensive power. Specialized in attacking souls? Qin Yu smiled. Li let's go in. No matter how powerful this God King of Death was, it was impossible for her to rely on the aura that was dispersed to harm them. This was even more so for Zhang Li, who had inherited Zhuo strength. Upon entering the black aura, Qin Yu felt that the black aura was about to enter his body and injure his soul. Merely child's play. With a thought from Qin Yu, the black and yellow aura on the surface of the waning snow spear that was floating beside him trembled slightly. As if encountering its natural enemy, the black aura rapidly retreated. It was simply unable to approach the spear. The black and yellow aura was a miraculous energy that was born from the creation of the world. How could the black aura possibly compare to its might? They were simply not on the same level. Qin Yu looked at Zhang Li beside him. At this moment, Zhang Li's body was faintly emitting a jade-green radiance. Similarly, the black aura was unable to approach Zhang Li in the slightest. Within the black aura, there was a mansion made of ice that was hundreds of millions of years old. Although this mansion was built with a majestic aura, there was not a single person inside. Qin Yu and Zhang Li both easily discovered that there was a passageway that led underground in the main hall of this mansion. Brother Yu, there is a passageway that leads to the ice palace several thousand li below the island. Should we go through the passageway or teleport there directly? Zhang Li looked at Qin Yu. Qin Yu pondered for a while. Teleport directly to the entrance of the underground palace. Under the coverage of Qin Yu's spatial power, everything under the island was under his observation. The passageway was indeed very dark and filled with black gas. Thousands of miles under the center of the island of ice, the endless ice had been hollowed out. This enormous ice cave had almost perfectly formed an ice palace. This palace had a radius of over 1,000 miles. Cold air lingered within the palace, making it look dreamy and illusory. Outside the palace, there was an endless amount of black gas. Strangely enough, the black gas did not enter the palace at all. Qin Yu and Zhang Li appeared out of thin air at the entrance of the palace. In this palace, aside from the God King of Death, there are 12 other female Empyrean gods. However, none of these 12 female Empyrean gods have come to guard the entrance. Qin Yu could not help but laugh. The 12 Empyrean god maids could not be blamed for this. To be able to pass through the breath of death and arrive at the entrance of the palace, it was not something that they could resist. That God King of Death is in a large hall under the main hall of this palace. Brother Yu, let's go. Zhang Li was able to sense the residence of the God King of Death. Qin Yu nodded his head slightly. Under the coverage of his spatial power, Qin Yu was able to clearly observe. Below this ice palace, there was another palace. However, that palace was filled with endless black gas. The black qi in the outside world came from the underground palace. In the corridor outside the main hall of the ice palace, there were 2 maids wearing emerald green feathered clothes walking over. Second sister, the palace master is about to come out of seclusion. Our leisurely days are about to be over. The slightly petite girl spoke. Seventh sister. The other maid stared at the main hall. What's wrong? The petite seventh sister looked at her second sister in astonishment. Earlier, I seemed to have heard some sort of sound. It seemed to have come from the passageway under the main hall. The second sister became slightly worried. Hearing what the second sister said, the seventh sister could not help but smile indifferently and said, "Second sister, rest assured. The palace master is cultivating down there. Who would dare to enter? Even if someone were to enter, they would only be courting death." That's true. The second sister nodded her head. However, she still took a glance at the entrance to the underground palace before leaving with her sister. Endless black gas covered the entire underground palace. It was impossible to see with one's eyes. However, Qin Yu and Zhang Li both knew the path clearly. In this underground palace, there was a spiral passageway. Qin Yu and Zhang Li walked side by side. Step by step, they went deeper into the palace. This time, Qin Yu had come to invite the God King of Death. Naturally, he did not wish to anger the God King of Death. In the passageway, he said in a clear voice, "This humble one is Qin Yu. I bring." Qin Yu's voice suddenly stopped. That was because countless crisp bell sounds could be heard. Those bell sounds were all different. When all the bell sounds were combined together, they actually contained a strange penetrating power. Qin Yu could not help but feel dizzy. Although he felt a little dizzy, it did not affect him too much. Brother Yu, this is one of Zhua Chulin's ordinary attacks, soul-leading sound. Although it does not cause much damage to the soul, it is able to make one unable to concentrate. During a battle, although it is not very eye-catching, it has a huge effect on the battle. Zhang Li said through telepathy. Qin Yu nodded his head to himself. This humble one is Qin Yu. I bring my wife Zhang Li here. The God King of Death. Qin Yu wanted to say something more. However, suddenly, A hoarse voice like that of an old woman could be heard. "Shut up. Those who dare to step into my place of cultivation deserve death." Immediately, the bell sounds became more intense. Qin Yu felt as if his soul was being pierced by needles. The divine spear waning snow beside the soul Yuanying immediately let out a low hum. The hum of the spear actually lessened the pain in Qin Yu's soul by a lot. Although this black and yellow qi is mysterious, I can only use it slightly through the divine spear waning snow. Qin Yu sighed in his heart. Qin Yu naturally knew how mysterious the black and yellow qi was. However, as of now, Qin Yu could only let the black and yellow qi fuse into his weapon. There was no other way to use the black and yellow qi. "Brother Yu, are you all right?" Li Er held Qin Yu's hand. A stream of life origin energy instantly entered Qin Yu's mind. Qin Yu's soul Yuanying immediately absorbed this stream of life origin energy. Qin Yu immediately felt that his soul Yuanying had become much fuller. Humph! Life origin energy? A hoarse cold hum was heard. Immediately after, Qin Yu and Zhang Li felt a gust of wind. Countless black bells were smashing toward Qin Yu and Zhang Li. Qin Yu couldn't help but feel a trace of anger in his heart. He merely didn't want to deal with this Death God King. Could it be that this Death God King really thought that he couldn't deal with him? "Death God King, I have no ill intentions in coming here." Qin Yu's deep voice sounded in the dark palace. At the same time, the divine spear waning snow appeared in Qin Yu's hand. With a shake of his arm, the divine spear waning snow turned into countless spear shadows. Every spear shadow was like a dragon soaring into the sky. In an instant, those bells were knocked back. "You do have some skills." While the voice was still sounding, a silk ribbon streaked across the sky and was about to wrap around Qin Yu. "Brother Yu, this is the Death God King's offensive weapon, the Soul Beckoning Silk. Once it wraps around you, the soul Yuanying of an ordinary God King would not be able to resist it." Zhang Li immediately transmitted her voice to Qin Yu. Hearing Zhang Li's words, Qin Yu couldn't help but feel a burst of anger. He had endured it repeatedly, but this Zuoqiulin actually wanted to kill him. Qin Yu immediately teleported away from the soul beckoning silk. Shortly after, he coldly snorted and said, "Zuoqiulin, if you continue like this, you won't have the chance to use the soul beckoning silk in the future." When facing the soul beckoning silk's attack earlier, Qin Yu could have used the divine spear waning snow to break the soul beckoning silk. However, once it was broken, it would be difficult to continue the conversation. "Humph, try it if you have the ability." That soul beckoning silk instantly arrived before Qin Yu. Just by the soul beckoning silk approaching his face, Qin Yu could feel his soul Yuanying trembling. Qin Yu didn't doubt that once he was bound by the soul beckoning silk, his soul Yuanying would truly collapse. Humph. Qin Yu's body suddenly flashed and moved a few meters horizontally. At the same time, the divine spear waning snow in his hand moved and abruptly stirred up the soul beckoning silk. On the surface of the divine spear waning snow shaft, the mysterious yellow aura was faintly flowing. Suddenly, the soul summoning silk actually loosened and disappeared without a trace. Phew! Wind appeared out of nowhere in the palace that was filled with dense black aura. All the black aura actually dissipated just like that. The underground palace finally revealed its true appearance. The underground palace was relatively spacious. What surprised Qin Yu the most was, the ice cubes that formed the underground palace were actually black. Looking at those black ice cubes carefully, there was actually a black aura slowly flowing within the ice cubes. In the center of the underground palace, on top of the black lotus throne, there was a black-robed woman that was so beautiful that it would take one's breath away. This black robe had a picture of a black bell. On her arms, there was a long black silk. The God King of Death, Zuoqiulin. At this moment, Zuoqiulin was looking at Qin Yu and Zhang Li. With a cold laugh, she said with a hoarse voice, "Qin Yu, you were indeed not lying. That spear of yours does indeed have the ability to break apart my soul-beckoning silk. Seeing that you have a good attitude, I'll give you a chance to speak. Speak, why have you come looking for me?" "You are indeed the same as I remembered. Zhongli looked at Zhuoqiulin. Her face was filled with joy. Zhuoqiulin and Zhuoqiumei's appearances were practically identical. The only difference was that their auras were completely different. When she saw Zhuoqiulin, who had the same appearance as Zhuoqiumei, Zhongli naturally felt somewhat excited. After all, Zhuoqiumei had watched her grow up. Senior Zhuoqiulin. Qin Yu was rather modest. This is my wife, Zhongli. I imagine you can tell that my wife possesses the elemental life energy. Humph. Zhuoqiulin glanced coldly at Zhongli. With a hoarse voice, she said, "Of course I can tell that my little sister possesses the elemental life energy. However, that silly little sister of mine died a long time ago. Why have you come looking for me?" Zhongli immediately said, "Aunt Zhuoqiulin, shut up." Zhuoqiulin raised her eyelids and sneered. "Don't try to worm your way into being friends with me. I am not familiar with you. If you have something to say, quickly say it. After you're done, quickly leave." Qin Yu started to frown. This Zhuoqiulin's character was truly too thorny. "Senior Zhuoqiulin," Qin Yu said directly. "Zhuoqiumei was a great benefactor to both me and Li Er. She died. However, Li Er inherited her strength and became the new God King of Life. Truth be told, the conflict between us and the Thunder Punishment City is extremely great. I hope that Senior will be able to help us take care of the Thunder Punishment City together with us. Of course, it could also be considered as avenging Senior Zhuoqiumei." "You speak better than you sing." Zhuoqiulin sneered. "That silly little sister of mine died. What does that have to do with me? You want me to fight against the Thunder Punishment City for her? What a joke. Senior Zhuoqiulin, please rest assured. That Thunder Punishment City merely has 4 great God Kings. I alone will be able to contain 2 of them. Li Er and God King Yi Feng will also be able to fight against them. If you were to join them, you would only give our side an overwhelming advantage." Qin Yu said immediately. Zhuoqiulin sneered. "You all can leave now," Zhuoqiulin said indifferently. Qin Yu and Zhongli could not help but feel a burst of helplessness. "You want me to fight without any benefits? You must be dreaming." Zhuoqiulin sat down cross-legged once again. "The grand new craftsman god actually wants to invite me over with just a few words? What a joke." Although Zhuoqiulin's voice was soft, Qin Yu was able to hear it very clearly. "Oh." Qin Yu and Zhongli glanced at each other. They were startled. Soon after, smiles appeared on their faces. "Senior Zhuoqiulin, we were in the wrong. May I know what Senior wants? This junior will definitely try his best to satisfy it," Qin Yu said promptly. Zhuoqiulin shot a glance at Qin Yu. Then, she slowly said, "Do you have a first-rate Grand Mist spiritual treasure? If you don't, a second-rate Grand Mist spiritual treasure would barely suffice." Hearing those words, Qin Yu started to feel puzzled. This Zhuoqiulin was so resolute in her refusal earlier. Why was she so easy to talk to now? You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.